of unwarranted influence.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, November 19th, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, author Scott Anderson, author of The Quiet Americans, 4 CIA Spies at the Dawn of the Cold War. A Tragedy, 3 acts. With unemployment numbers rising, Mitch McConnell shuts down stimulus chances. Joe Biden hopes the fever will break once Donald Trump has left the building. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's vote tally nearing 80 million votes. However, after a call from Donald Trump, those Michigan canvassers, they flipped again on certifying Detroit. And speaking of Donald Trump, he and his Republican administration admit to looking to light so many fires, Joe Biden won't be able to put them all out. And what do you do with a former Trump speechwriter who was fired for going to a conference with white nationalists? Well, of course, you appoint him to a commission which has primary responsibility for protecting Holocaust memorials in Europe. A wrongful death lawsuit filed against Tyson Foods alleges managers would bet on how many of its employees would catch COVID. Multiples did, and at least 4 died. Meanwhile, Mike Pompeo visits the Golan Heights, claims that exerting pressure on Israel over the occupied territories is anti-Semitic. And the COVID and recession silver lining, U.S. greenhouse gases at their lowest level in 3 decades. New report, White House blocked a DOJ deal to pay for the mental health services for separated families. And lastly, we now have hit over 250,000 deaths in this country from the coronavirus. 179,000 new infections, 1,923 deaths, and 80,000 hospitalized as of yesterday, as reports come in from around the country that hospitals are being overrun. And we are on the brink, of course, of Thanksgiving holidays. That means travel. That means people seeing each other in tight quarters. And we still have a major, I don't know what to call it, ideological, cultural divide over the, not even the efficacy, it's the attempts to curtail the virus. Just seemed to be a very loaded question in terms of the of COVID. And yesterday we had on the program one of the top epidemiologists in the country, who someone who had worked with or has worked with Ebola in Sierra Leone, and one who works with infectious diseases and is a student of past epidemics. And he's never seen. I mean, there is no real precedent for the, and I don't want to say politicization, because of course everything is everything in some respects is political, and everything can and often should be politicized when it involves government policy. You weaponize certain things for political advantage, and hopefully you do so in a way that is has some fidelity to the truth. But the idea that an entire party would adopt as an ideological precept that masks don't protect you or other people in the context of a pandemic is just out and out nuts. It's insanity. I mean, the only other equivalent we can find, at least in modern times, is that same party, the Republican Party, denying the existence of global warming, or denying the existence that it's man-made, or then denying the ability for humans to in any way change the trajectory of global warming. I mean, I keep coming back to, when I hear these things, that we have that at the heart of the coalition that has voted for Donald Trump are religious fundamentalists. And being a religious fundamentalist, being a fundamentalist of any sort, really, it impacts the way that you not just perceive reality, but the way that you ingest and digest information. And it also, I think it implicates the way that you perceive our ability and even the propriety of us attempting to deal with things like science, like natural sciences. Like, on some level, I'm not convinced that in its deepest recesses, the ability for someone like the governor of South Dakota to get up there and while her state is engulfed, both the Dakotas are engulfed in COVID, to get up there and say their masks, there's no proof that masks help in any way, is just sort of a reluctance to say that humanity, I should say, or the people, or that society has the ability to in any way affect biology, is just an offense. I think that's a big part of it. It's just, God gave us COVID. We just got to ride this thing out. That's not what they have said explicitly, but part of that has got to be the subtext. Here's a clip. This clip comes via a reporter at the Ohio Capitol Journal, Tyler Buchanan. You can find him on Twitter at TylerJoeLB, or it could be Tyler Joel B. And this is a Republican state representative, J. Todd Smith. I used to feel bad about playing clips of, like, state senators, or what's going to become of them. But of course, so much of what we've seen over the past 20 years starts in state houses and then works its way up. But this is also indicative of the entire Republican Party as it stands right now. Here is a Republican state representative, J. Todd Smith, talking about, and I know this is very, here it is. He's talking about the a bill that purports to deal with the coronavirus. And in Ohio, we should tell you, well, all right, go ahead. Play this.
But also our public economy. COVID's had no effect on our economy. Our response as leaders in this state is what has had an effect on our economy. If the people are scared to go to restaurants, I put a lot of blame on the fear-mongering that was produced by experts who overpredicted what this was going to do early on. That is not to discard the idea that we want to listen to experts. That's what we're doing here. I disdain the idea, though, that if I'm not a doctor and epistemologist or whatever it is, that somehow I can't speak in an informed way to this bill or to this issue.
You know what? I think if you don't know what an epidemiologist is, I think maybe that should be disqualifying. I mean, obviously, you've been elected, you get the right to do it. But I do think it should be disqualifying in the minds of people who want to actually have some form of reasoned debate about it. If you don't know that when you're talking about a pandemic, that epidemiology, not epistemology, is more relevant, then yeah, I would actually question that. And I would also say that the idea that people are afraid to go to restaurants because of state or federal or local or medical officials have scaremongered is just, it's bat crap crazy. In Ohio, put up the Ohio map. The number of cases over the past 14 days has grown by 107%. The number of hospitalized has grown by 88%. The number of deaths have grown by 19%. Now, hospitalizations and deaths, they're lagging indicators. So this 14-day change, one can imagine that in 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to see that number of deaths increase dramatically. I mean, it's nuts. And there's a drop there, and I think that drop is probably, now I can't quite tell, on November 18th. It's possible. It's possible that some of that scaremongering worked. You got to wait a couple of days to see. Dropped, down to where it was last week.
Yeah, it looks like the peaks in both Ohio and also the Dakotas was earlier this week. But, I mean, who knows if that's going to remain that way.
Well, let's hope, which means that the scaremongering is working, because that means that people are actually saying, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't go to that restaurant. If you're looking for why the economy is suffering and why Ohioans or any other people around the country are suffering from the economic implications of people not wanting to go to work and risk getting sick, or not wanting to go and eat at a restaurant because they don't want to risk getting sick or dying, or the implications of people not going to a bar or going to a gym, you should look to Washington, D.C., where there was a massive failure by the Republicans to pass any type of economic relief. And now we're not going to see any until early February at the earliest, it seems. Yeah. And we're having 12 million people who are going to run out of unemployment the day after Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. And we're going to see eviction moratoriums end within days after that. And we're going to be in many parts of the country in a position where you're going to see hospitals, and you can build more beds. I mean, you can stick beds in a gym, but if you don't have enough nurses and you don't have enough doctors, it's not going to make a difference to treat people who are getting very ill. And then, of course, we won't know for a while. the long-term implications of getting COVID. I mean, we're starting to get an idea of it. But we don't know how widespread it will be. It really is stunning. And then this guy, whatever it is.
Yeah, we should just say epistemology is the study of knowledge, and like, what is knowledge and how do you attain it? And like, we probably could have an army of I can't say it now, on the GOP's case to figure out what the hell's going on there too as well.
Epistemologists, yes, all going in and dealing with the epistemological closure that guy has been subjected to, apparently. But it's a scary time. It's just it's a bizarre and scary time. With that said, we're gonna change things up a little bit and maybe take a little story of how CIA and our entire perspective on the Cold War could have gone right, but went horribly, horribly wrong with Scott Anderson. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on we have him on Zoom. Returning to the program, Scott Anderson. He is a journalist, novelist, veteran war correspondent, and was last on this program for Lawrence in Arabia, War, Deceit, Imperial Folly, and the Making of the Modern Middle East. Scott, good to see you again. I think you were on, it feels like it was about like 45 years ago. But
it was a while.
It's been a while, but it's great to have you here and back with another really fascinating book. And I mean, I guess I don't know if I had forgotten that you were a war correspondent, and it's for me personally, it's fascinating because I think when the movie Salvador came out, I was just beginning to understand our role as a country in Central America. I think I was in college somewhere around that time, and was learning about it, and that's more or less where you got your start, or at least that was the genesis in some respects of this book.
Right.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was in El Salvador. I was kind of an aspiring, a failed journalist at this point in my career. It was in 1984. The dirty war in El Salvador had been going on for 4 years at that point, in which the Reagan administration was supporting the right-wing government. The government of El Salvador was running death squads that had killed some 40,000 purported communists, mostly just people on the left side of the spectrum. But by 1984, the dirty war was largely coming to an end. The death squad numbers were way down. And at this point, the Reagan administration, in order to continue funding the Salvadoran government, had to get certification every year from Congress that human rights were improving. So there was this ongoing fiction that somehow the death squads and the government were two completely separate entities. I happened to be in Salvador, and it was for the inauguration of the new president in Salvador, and I was walking down a street in downtown San Salvador, the capital, when a van passed me, pulled to the curb maybe 100, 150 feet in front of me, and the body of a woman was thrown out onto the sidewalk. Classic death squad victim. Her hands were tied in front of her. She'd been shot in the head. And I happened to be the only person close by. And as I was walking towards this dead woman, a military van pulled up alongside the body. And this is all in the space of at most 10 seconds. Three soldiers jump out. They throw her body into the military van and drive away. So it was this kind of very obvious sleight of hand that had honed by long practice, but it allowed the government to maintain this fiction that somehow the death squads and the army were separate things. And that experience, almost more than anything else I can think of, really kind of clarified this message in my mind, question in my mind of how has it come to this? How, in the name of fighting communism, or what some people claim is communism, has the United States gotten into bed with death squad regimes around the world? And then in looking into the past of overthrowing democratic regimes, plotting assassinations around the world. So that was kind of the genesis where I thought I really wanted to try to understand how this happened. How did America go from being this kind of shining city on the hill at the end of World War II? We were going to be the exporter of democracy around the world. We were going to dismantle the colonial empires around the world. And then in a very few years, in fact, we're overthrowing democratic governments and propping up the colonial empires.
Well, certainly and your book follows that period from 44 to 56, which is essentially the birth of the CIA.
Right.
And you track it with four different men who represent sort of, I guess, different positions within the start of the CIA, if you will. But let's just talk, how much of the country was, how much of it was that the country's perspective was that, trying to export democracy and sort of model good behavior versus that was the perspective of some of these guys? Like, we certainly were colonial in at least narrow circumstances around, at least in our hemisphere, right up until that point. The Philippines and the West and Cuba. We certainly had designs on things, but maybe they weren't so, I guess, far-reaching. Just clarify that for me as we set this up.
We may be one of the only empires in history that steadfastly refuses to recognize we're an empire, the United States. Yes, certainly, as you say, prior to World War II, we saw Latin America as our backyard, and going all the way back to the Monroe Doctrine, kept other powers out. We had colonized the Philippines and Cuba, but it was really with World War II that, for the first time, the United States was on a truly global stage and a global superpower. We had been allied with the Soviet Union in defeating the Axis. And I think that there was an idea, certainly within the early Truman administration, that alliance, that wartime alliance with the Soviets would continue. The Soviets clearly had a very different plan in mind. Very quickly, essentially annexed all of Eastern Europe and were fomenting communist revolutions around the world. So I think America was kind of slow to the mark in realizing that we are now in a new conflict. And so it wasn't until 1947 that the CIA was created, and then the following year that this covert action wing of the CIA, the Office of Policy Coordination, was created. And most of the men I write about are from the Office of Policy Coordination and involved in covert operations around the world.
One of the things that really struck me, and I guess I just never really had thought about it, was how outgunned we were in that, like in the spy business. Like I was trying to, I was thinking like as to why that might be the case. Presumably, right? It's like, because you have all these countries in Europe over the course of the first half of the 20th century in particular, who, what's happening in the neighboring country can very easily have direct implications for what's happening in yours. And any advantage you can get in terms of affecting the outcome of what happens in another country, or at least advance warning that, like, hey, wait a second, guys, we might want to put some horses on our northern border because things are looking a little weird up there.
Right.
I mean, is that why we were so, because and even as you talk about even as you write about those first, I guess 12 years or so, it feels like to the extent that there were successes, and, I think your whole book in many respects is like, even the successes were ultimately failures. But to the extent that there were any successes, it seems to not be in Europe, like where we were JV. It feels like on some level.
Oh, we were such JV. A great way to illustrate that is one of the men I write about, Peter Sichel. He's actually still alive. He's 98 years old. He became the first. It wasn't called the CIA yet, but it was the precursor of the CIA. But essentially, the first station chief of the covert operation unit of the American military in Berlin immediately after World War II. Already by the fall of 1945, Berlin was becoming the ground zero of the coming Cold War, and the Soviets had certainly thousands, if not tens of thousands, of intelligence operatives in Berlin at the time. Peter Sichel is put in charge of a unit that consists of 9 operatives, 9 men, and he's just turned 23. So it really just illustrates just how completely clueless the Americans were. I mean, not to take anything away from Peter Sichel's brilliance, but yes, absolutely JV. And America is constantly oscillates between flexing its muscle around the world and going into isolation. And clearly, at the end of World War II, we were going in. We had planned to go into another isolationist period. The American military was demobilizing at the rate of 10,000 soldiers a day. And Roosevelt had famously told Stalin that in 1 year's time, he didn't anticipate there being any American soldiers left in Europe. And of course, Stalin's eyes just lit up at that, because in his mind, that was just unilateral disarmament.
All right. Well, let's talk about the four people. You've already mentioned Sichel, I guess is the pronunciation. Yeah. Let's start, I guess, with Frank Wisner, who was the first chief of the covert operations, essentially, of the CIA. Give us his background and how did he become that guy?
Yeah, so Frank Wisner was he had actually been a Wall Street lawyer before World War II, and he anticipated the war coming. He anticipated America joining World War II, so he quit his law firm and joined the Navy. During the war, he ended up in the Wartime Intelligence Agency of the United States, the Office of Strategic Services, and in that role, he was actually probably the first American serviceman to watch the Red Army, the Soviet Red Army, in action. He was in Romania in the summer of 1944 when Romania switched sides in the war. They had been allied with Nazi Germany. They switched sides. The Red Army flowed in, and Wisner watched as the Red Army essentially took over the country in a matter of days. And from his experience at that time, he was the canary in the coal mine, and he was sending messages back to Washington saying, this wartime alliance is going to end. The Soviets are not our allies. He ends up.
I should just say that there was a function of him watching them take ethnic Germans and put them in trains,
put them in boxcars, and sending them off as slave labor inside the Soviet Union.
Which, of course, if you have just come out of liberating, I mean, I don't know where if Wisner was, part of necessarily of liberating any camps, but I would imagine that was the talk
Sure.
If you were stationed in Germany. Right. And watching that happen again,
that's exactly right. Yeah, no, and it had a profound effect on him, and he really became a ardent Cold Warrior from that moment. He wasn't listened to at the time. He goes back to his Wall Street law firm immediately after the war. When the Office of Policy Coordination was started up in 1948, the covert action wing of the CIA, he's named the head of it. And so over the next decade, he creates what's called the Mighty Wurlitzer, this vast apparatus that was operating in some 60 countries around the world, all designed to fight the communist threat. And it was everything from very soft power initiatives, like they set up overseas library programs throughout Europe of giving people access to American literature, brought Broadway troops over to Europe, started the Paris Review. So this is all kind of on the soft power side. And then on over to the hard power of overthrowing governments, assassinating foreign leaders, airdropping anti-communist partisans behind the Iron Curtain. So it ran this whole gamut of activities.
How much, I mean, when I hear, Wall Street guy becoming an ardent anti-communist, right, that, I immediately, because from my perspective, my retrospective, I guess, view of our involvement around the world, I immediately think like, oh, he's doing this for corporate interests, for financial interests. How much of it was it ideological at that time, or was it like I watched them march people into boxcars?
Right. I think it was ideological. The interesting thing about all four of the men I profile, all of them were quite liberal, politically liberal, certainly socially very, very liberal. They really did see, in many ways, the communist threat, especially under Stalin. I mean, the Stalin regime was an absolutely brutal regime. They really saw it as kind of a carry-on from the war against the fascists of Japan and Germany. So I think. And Peter Sichel, the man still alive, he described it as a crusade. He said this was a romantic crusade. We were the good guys, they were the bad guys. We were going to save the world. So I think initially there was a huge amount of idealism involved in it, and that gradually was compromised in the sorts of operations they got involved with.
Yeah, let's talk about Edward Lansdale. He was he the quiet American? I mean, was he the model for Graham Greene?
Yeah. Graham Greene insisted he wasn't, but they knew each other in Saigon in the mid 1950s and despised each other. And I think that Graham Greene just didn't want Lansdale to have the satisfaction of thinking of a book had been written about him. Lansdale had been an ad man in San Francisco, worked on the Levi Strauss contract. He became known as the miracle worker of Asia. He went out to the Philippines immediately after World War II. The Philippines, essentially an American colony, ruled by a really corrupt oligarchy. And there was now the beginnings of a communist insurgency in the Philippines. And Lansdale had this very simple kind of Madison Avenue idea that if you want to win over the local people, if you want to turn back the communist threat, you have to give the people a government they can believe in and that works for them. So he proceeded to he found a kind of obscure Filipino senator and made him the Minister of Defense. The military, which had been actually very much like the Salvadoran military in the 1980s, essentially a death squad military. He and Raymond Magsaysay reformed the military. They had soldiers going out doing refurbishing schools and clinics and even bringing in harvest from the fields, and made the army essentially the people's army, and succeeded in defeating the communist insurgency in the Philippines in about a 2-year period. It's one of the very few success stories. On the basis of that, the CIA, Lansdale's back in Washington in 1954. The CIA director says, we have problems in another Asian country, Vietnam. We want you to go there and just do the same thing in Vietnam that you did in the Philippines. And so Lansdale goes off to Vietnam and very nearly succeeds. He cozies up to the Vietnamese prime minister. He launches all these reform programs. Lansdale was the head of the first American military mission to Vietnam, and it consisted of him and 12 other men, ultimately to be followed by nearly 3 million more.
Wow. And then tell us about Michael Burke.
Yeah, Michael Burke he's just a fabulous character. I describe him in the book as James Bond before James Bond existed. Burke had been a commando with the OSS during World War II, dropped behind enemy lines, extraordinarily handsome. People describe him as the most charming man they ever met. In 1949, he's tried his hand at writing screenplays out in Hollywood. That's gone belly up. He's living in New York, trying to be a writer. So, as a result, impoverished. The CIA, the Office of Policy Coordination, come to him and go.
How do they come to him? I mean, how does that happen? Like, we're just going to roll for
because of because all these men came out of the OSS during World War II, so it was kind of that OSS fraternity, and so there's this kind of Burke sat with these two men from the CIA at the Algonquin Hotel in New York. And they kind of beat around the bush for a while. And they finally said to Michael Burke, so what do you know about Albania? And Burke didn't know anything about Albania, except that it was a communist regime in Eastern Europe. And they finally get around and say, we want you to start a revolution in Albania. And to do that, we're going to pay you $10,000 a year. You're going to have to move to Rome. You're going to have to live large in Rome because your cover story is going to be as a film producer. So Burke basically says, where do I sign? And he goes off to Rome and lives this, I mean, it really is very cinematic, this kind of crazy double life where he, as a film producer, he's hanging out with all these Italian directors and stars in Rome. And he's periodically slipping away to meet up with these Albanian conspirators.
And this is in the late 40s, right?
Late 40s, right.
And we should say this is almost like the pilot program.
That's right. Albania was the pilot program. Yeah. Okay. And the code name for it was Operation Valuable Fiend, which I also got very lucky with the operational names in this book because some of them were pretty boring, but I got some pretty good ones. So
Valuable Fiend.
Valuable Fiend. Yeah, that was the operation.
And I should say that in the book, the story of how he was worried that, he would be quite like, what are you doing? Like, what things have you produced? I think showed a real ignorance of Hollywood, where nobody really, as long as you're paying for the drinks, everybody assumes you're doing something. Nobody believes what anybody's doing anyways.
That's right. And what he discovered, when he was worried that he was worried that they were going to start asking questions of, what he was actually doing there. But he discovered the Italian film people were just as self-absorbed as the ones in Hollywood. All they wanted to do was talk about themselves. So never ask them a question. So.
Film producers don't do anything anyways.
Exactly. That's right.
But, right. So, and then it didn't work.
It didn't work. It was a disaster. And Burke then went on from Albania to head to Germany and heading covert operations there, these infiltration operations throughout Eastern Europe, in Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and they were all disasters. The Soviets had these groups infiltrated from the get-go.
There was tell about the Polish hoax, because I mean the thing that's amazing about this is that we call it the pilot program, but there was no proof of concept.
That's right.
Like it never ever worked. It seems they were completely mismatched, overmatched. And at one point, you have this, and in fact, and it ends. I mean, just jumping ahead, I guess, and to the Hungarian Revolution, which is reminiscent in my mind of of George Herbert Walker Bush's sort of encouragement for the Kurds.
Right.
And then when they finally respond, nothing. Yeah, I mean, it's like they spend all this time trying to foment revolutions. And by doing that, well, all right, yeah. Why don't you talk about that dynamic? That the attempts to foment revolutions actually ended up inhibiting their ability to support the one that happened organically.
That's right. Yeah, it was this idea, and this was Frank Wisner. His dream was to try to foment an anti-communist uprising somewhere in the Soviet bloc. It finally happened with Hungary in 1956. The CIA never saw it coming. There was no way to see it coming. It was a truly spontaneous, organic uprising, and in a 24-hour period went from students demonstrating in the streets to full-scale insurrection, where Red Army soldiers were being hunted down and killed in the streets of Budapest. Wisner happened to be in Europe at the time that this was going on, and he was sending frantic cables back to the Eisenhower administration saying, look, we finally got what we've been urging these people to do for the past 10 years. We have to come to their aid. All of a sudden, the Eisenhower administration thinks, if we go into Hungary, if we go into the Soviets' backyard, it might trigger a war that could end up being a nuclear war. So they just washed their hands of the whole affair. The Soviets crushed the revolution, and Wisner happens to be on the Austrian border with Hungary as these 200,000 Hungarian refugees stream across the border, as the Soviets are hunting them in the background. And he has a complete nervous breakdown that he never actually really recovers from, and he ends up committing suicide a number of years later.
It was the plan all the time. I mean, I guess maybe I'm just sort of, today there was a story about how the Trump administration, they conceded that what they're trying to do is set so many fires that Biden, when he gets into office, can't deal with them.
Right.
I mean, there doesn't seem to have been any actual, even if there's this one story, and we don't really have too much time for it, but where they thought they had, some partisans, I guess, in Poland, and they kept sending them guns and money, and it turns out it was just like a sting operation, and just like the counterintelligence people are just taking all the money and all the weapons.
Yeah.
But was this really just about we can't really succeed at any of these things that we're talking about, but what we can do is just provide, some headache for somebody in the interior that they have to deal with?
That's a great question. And I think what happened, one thing that I was really stunned by, it came as a real revelation to me, is that the Americans in general, and the CIA in particular, had nobody inside the Stalin regime. Not a mole, a junior officer in the Kremlin, nobody anywhere. So they were operating completely in the dark. So really the only way in hopes of trying to figure out what was happening behind the Iron Curtain in their mind was to do these infiltration operations in the hopes that one or two of these 50 people they were sending in might survive and be able to come back and tell them something. But it really was kind of shocking how in the dark they were. And so somewhat in their defense, I think that, and when you're dealing with a kind of a crazy figure like Stalin, you can understand this sort of sense of panic. They never saw the Korean War coming. That, the Russians got the nuclear weapons 3 years before they were supposed to. So there over and over again, there was these shocks to the system that I think really kind of put them in a defensive crouch.
Wasn't there also there was an attempt at one point by Khrushchev early on to sort of, and I can't find it here in my the Peaceful Coexistence Initiative, I guess, that Kennan, who was then the Secretary of State, I guess, basically rejected. There was another road not taken that would have aligned more with the American capacities, it seems, to do whatever they thought they were going to do, which was to sort of if we can't beat them, which we can't. I mean, they had proof over and over again, not to mention, Mossadegh in Iran and Arbenz, which seemed to me sort of an example of here's a smaller pond that we can play in and we can be better at. And was ostensibly about Russian expansion, but I think may have also, in my mind, been about people using the idea of, Soviet expansion at that time as a cover for corporate interests more than, all of a sudden this idea, it's one thing to be in the middle of Eastern Europe and say, hey, these guys are expansionists. It's another to be, down in Guatemala and going we got to get in there because Russia's going to move in.
Right.
That seems to me more about I'm really worried about our banana plantations down there or something.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Certainly by the time the Eisenhower administration's coming in, there was this vast commercial world that fueled and depended on the ongoing Cold War. And it was famously Eisenhower himself was the one who coined the phrase the military-industrial complex. I think You mentioned of this kind of overture that the Eisenhower administration missed. I think one of the great sort of crossroads of history was the fact that Stalin died just 6 weeks after the Eisenhower administration came in. And as you said, his successors, they were vying for power. They sent out this message, never been done before, that they want to have peaceful coexistence with the West. Eisenhower is tempted to extend an olive branch back. He's persuaded by his Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, who was the ultimate Cold Warrior, to reject it. He said, "This is a sign of Soviet weakness. Why should we accept a half a loaf of bread when we're about to get the whole thing?" So again and again in that mid 1950s period, when there were these overtures from the Soviets towards peaceful coexistence, culminating in the Hungarian Revolution, the Americans just consistently rejected them. And there's this really kind of eerie parallel between what Khrushchev was trying to do in the mid 50s and what Gorbachev did 30 some odd years later. And it's not far-fetched to think that you might have been able to end the Cold War right then in the mid 1950s. And instead it went on until 1989.
That possibility is fascinating to contemplate, what the trajectory of the whole world would have been if the Soviet Union was part of NATO, I guess.
Right, which Khrushchev asked to become part of NATO. And if it had happened then you wouldn't have had Vietnam, you wouldn't have had Salvador, you wouldn't have had Chile, you wouldn't have had hundreds of things going on around the world, tragedies ever since.
And lastly, just why did it take you so long to get to this book? If you had that awareness of that something had gone awry with the U.S. covert operations and the CIA that ended up, dumping that woman in front of you, essentially.
Right.
How did you come to do this book now?
Good question. The short answer is I had to pay the bill. So I was doing a lot of journalism. Just prior to this, I did this special project for the New York Times Magazine where I thought it was going to be, writers are always deluded optimists. And so I did this project that I thought was going to take me 6 months of doing this survey of the Arab Spring revolutions, and it taking 2 years of my life. I can't really give a good answer why it took me so long to get, but I promise you my next one won't take 6-7 years.
Well, no, it wasn't tied to me, but it was more like, how did it take you to get to this topic, as opposed to going through how did it? Because this really does ask that question of of the roads not taken, right, and the disillusionment that these guys suffered when they realized oh wow, we did worse than not success. We did damage.
Right. I think it always occurred to me that I wanted to look at that period because it really was the seminal period of the Cold War, those early years. And I was drawn to it. The kind of history I like to write is where you have, not necessarily, ordinary people, quote, but people who have a tremendous amount of freedom of action. And that was true in the early Cold War, the early CIA. These guys were sent out in the field and kind of left to their own devices. They could try this operation or not. So it's really that period. This is kind of more from a writer's standpoint. It's that period when everything isn't being decided by guys sitting behind desks. And it's really guys out in the field living by their wits. And I'm fascinated by that over and over again in my writing. So,
Scott Anderson, the book is The Quiet Americans, 4 CIA Spies at the Dawn of the Cold War, a tragedy in 3 acts. It is, we're living, I think, in many respects with still on that trajectory, though obviously it's changed a little bit, but it is fascinating to contemplate, which I think these guys must have contemplated, what if we had taken that other road? But we will put a link to that at majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sam. My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
And check that book out. It is It is just fascinating to contemplate. What if we had gone in that different direction? All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, folks. One of the things that we're going to be watching over the next couple of days and, a week or two is assuming that Joe Biden is allowed to assume the role of president-elect. I mean, he has, but in such a way that actually he can start to do stuff for the American public, right? Like, I don't know, roll out a plan on how we're going to deal with the raging COVID infections across the country, or begin to prepare all of the executive actions. Now, we now have an increase in initial claims for jobless benefits. This is a way in which people, essentially statisticians, measure layoffs. It rose to 742,000 people last week. That was up from 711,000 filed a week earlier. I mentioned at the top of the show, we have 12 million people who are going to be off of extended unemployment benefits on December 26th. And if we're adding to the ranks of the unemployed, we are looking at eviction moratoriums ending across the country. We're looking at an economic disaster for people. We showed that clip yesterday. The cars lining up for food in Dallas, I think it was. I mean, miles, it seemed like, of cars lining up for food. And we have Mitch McConnell has just left the building. My understanding, there does not seem to be any appearance of an attempt to deal with any type of stimulus package, at least before their Christmas break. And what just continues to gall me on a day after Nancy Pelosi was nominated to become the Speaker of the House again by the Democratic caucus is the utter failure of Pelosi and Schumer to either predict or that this happening. I mean, because this is not a scenario that should be of any surprise to anybody. I mean, we talked about this, that if Joe Biden wins the election and Nancy Pelosi doesn't even take that $1.8 trillion, who knows if it was even real, but doesn't even sign off to take it, there wasn't going to be any help for the American public until at least January 22nd at best. And now, unless the Democrats take these seats in Georgia, who knows what Joe Biden's going to get from Mitch McConnell. He seems to be thinking that he's going to be able to get something. But this was predictable. And the idea that Mitch McConnell will pay no price for this, because he will not. You cannot take advantage of these type of political moments if you decide to take advantage of them 15 minutes before they happen. The value of Nancy Pelosi saying yes to Steve Mnuchin's $1.8 trillion offer, regardless of what was in it, was because it was going to force Mitch McConnell to either vote for it or against it. And if they voted for it, there would have been strife amongst Republican senators in the Republican caucus. And if they voted against it, Mitch McConnell's actions today would look that much more worse. And they're going to look that much more worse in 2 weeks and in a month and in 3 months. But the predicate has not been set. And the Republicans have gotten away for 4.5 years without having to pay any price for their relationship with Donald Trump. The only time they did is when people didn't have the opportunity to vote against Donald Trump, and so they voted against Republicans as a second-order measure. But when Trump was on the ballot, folks didn't have that need. All right, we're going to say goodbye. We'll be back tomorrow. For those of you sticking around, We're going to go into the fun half. The crew is going to be taking over the gang. Old Matt, new Emma. I guess new Jamie. I mean, if Matt's new, Emma and Jamie they're timeless, I guess. But they will be here. Are they going to sign on in just a moment? I just want to remind you, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member today by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the fun half, and then, you support the free half, and then you get the fun half right after that. So check it out, jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget also AM Quickie, 7 minutes of headline news from a left perspective. Some stories you don't hear generally when you hear headline news. In fact, a decent amount of them that you don't. And we get it out the door very early. Today we had a little bit of a technical hiccup, and so we didn't get it out until like 9 or so. But in general, we get it out very quickly. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Don't forget, we also have merch. It's getting around Hanukkah and Christmas, folks. And are we at the winter solstice, or has that already happened?
No, that's about a month away.
Pretty sure that's in December.
There's a lot of gifts. There's a lot of gift-giving opportunities, and Majority Report swag makes a great gift. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. All right, well, there is everybody has aligned. Don't forget, today on No McKee's show, check it out, 3 p.m., youtube.com/The No McKee Show. And on that show today, you will see Kevin Young, the author of Levers of Power, How the 1% Rules About and what the 99% Can Do About It. Representative Chris Robb and Arun Chaudhary will be on there today, 3 p.m. noon on YouTube, right after today's Majority Report. Jamie, what's happening on the Antifada?
Well, this week on the Antifada, we have kind of a sit around and chat episode. You know, some of our episodes are more formal interviews. This time, just me and Sean sitting and chatting. We talked a little bit about my experience canvassing for the Defund NYPD campaign. I opened up about how I'm feeling discouraged and depressed and how that is a normal thing to feel when you are a leftist. We talked about some bad takes on class and how we really wish people would understand class in the Marxist sense and why it is correct to do so. And did a little musing about the impact it will or won't have on millennials' politics, that some of their parents are boomers with property that they might inherit. Then again, they might not. There are a lot of factors there. I thought it was a pretty good one. Patreon.com/The Antifada.
And old Matt, what's happening on Doomed?
I wish I had the problem of inheriting property at some point. Anyway, youtube.com/Matt Binder.
Hey, buddy. See that right behind me?
Well, Mila and Saul will have it all.
If you want, we'll see. We'll see what happens if you come by at the holidays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not this year.
Haven't gotten any calls from the kids lately. I just wanted to let you know that, but go ahead.
youtube.com/Matt Binder. Tonight at 9 p.m., I will be going through all the conspiracy theories about the Dominion voting systems, especially in light of Trump sharing the OANN segment that featured a expert analyst who gave all this information about why there was electoral fraud. And that expert analyst just happens to be the son of the guy who owns 8kun, formerly known as 8chan. So, lots of fun stuff going on in the conspiracy theory world on the right. And we'll be going through it all tonight, youtube.com/Matt Binder, 9 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. And new Matt, what happened on TMBS this week?
Yeah, on TMBS this week, David Griscom talked to Paul O'Connell about UK labor. Paul O'Connell's really smart about the labor problem and how, it's good that Corbyn's reinstated, but it's also sort of like being grateful for being kicked in the head. And so he talks about the future of the left and labor there. Also, next Tuesday, David Griscom and I will have a announcement at the normal TMBS time on Tuesday, 7 p.m. So look forward to that announcement, folks.
Shoot. There we go. All right. All right, Jamie, Matt, Emma, have fun. See you guys tomorrow. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Well, Sam won't be with you shortly, but Jamie, Matt, Emma, and myself
And Matt.
will all be with you. Well, I am myself, right?
Yeah. Well, no,
Wow.
I wanted to give you the proper introduction as well.
Aw, that's very sweet, Emma.
I just had a Tubin moment, but instead of it was me eating my salad. I didn't realize my camera was on. So I hope the audience enjoyed that.
Better than the alternative kind.
Certainly.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call that a Tubin moment.
Yeah, I would steer away from calling that a Tubin moment. I don't think it's just having your camera on. I think there's some other stuff that's
right. Well, I'm sorry. I thought this was like a free space for ideas and throwing things out there.
You guys don't know how Emma likes to party.
Sorry.
You guys don't know how Emma likes to party.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're learning new things about me every day.
Maybe eating salad is her thing.
If that's my thing, I need to grow a personality.
Well, if that's your thing, I respect it, Emma. So,
hey, a really good salad could be extremely pleasurable.
Yeah.
No shame to all the salad creeps out there. Just be careful with those croutons, folks.
No, I do enjoy a good salad, but like in the winter, I feel like all I want is comfort food. And so the salad, it's more just like I have to force myself along that path for lunch.
Nothing wrong with that.
We fans of, what are we fans of here? Romaine lettuce? What are we fans of here? What's
Please.
What's the big salad?
Oh my God. As an ex-vegan, I'm a little bit traumatized by all the sad salads I was offered as like a main course. But I like a salad with a lot of things in it. I mean, I'm a fan of arugula. It's got a lot of flavor. I'll put some baked tofu in there.
That's an arugula salad with nuts, some chicken.
Some fruits. Yeah. Like, go crazy with it.
Yeah. No, I don't like lettuce that is not like nutritious in any way, because then why are you eating a salad? Like iceberg lettuce is just water basically. So I like kale and arugula because you can feel the nutrients in there.
I do enjoy a good kale salad, but you got to massage the dressing into the kale. Otherwise, it's like eating cardboard.
Agreed. I like sauteing kale. That's like my kind of new thing. What I make with dinner, you just put a little olive oil, a little garlic, a little salt. Pretty good.
I had some last night.
Very nice. Mm-hmm. All right, we can move past this.
Shall we?
I'm just sitting back and listen. I just like a crunchy salad. So
I can't remember the last time I had
my thing.
Yeah, Matt will put fruit roll-ups and Skittles in a bowl, and that's his version of salad.
That's right.
Like the closest I got to salad. Are you talking about? I mean, that might be true of both of us, Matt's. Actually, I mean, my ears are burning because that's true of me. I would say closest I've got to a salad is like heating up some quinoa. I mean, this is not remote anything leafy, but yeah, I mean, it's not even quinoa is a grain, isn't it? So it's not even.
Well, if you look up the definition of salad, it's maddeningly vague. It's just like a mixture of ingredients in a bowl. Like what?
Okay. Well, I had some cordon bleu. I had some chicken cordon bleu things that I heated up in the microwave and put them in a bowl of quinoa once, and that's my favorite salad.
Oh my God!
There you go.
Wow, you're gonna die. Okay. Shall we move on to?
No, I think we should just continue talking for the next hour and a half about salad.
And viewership just like takes a nosedive.
No, actually, it looks like viewership is raising. More salad talk that people are demanding.
Let's do a full, like, detailed survey of Matt's health right now. What's your blood pressure? No, actually, Matt Leck. We're doing.
Leck. All right.
We're doing.
Leck looks like he's healthy. He's a jock, so he's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I've done several push-ups this COVID.
I know it's kind of neo-lib, but I still love 30 Rock, where Liz Lemon feels weak and goes, "It's like I did that push-up last year for nothing."
Problematic fave.
Yeah, it's okay. I will love it forever.
There's a lot of jokes in 30 Rock.
It's very satirical, which I always appreciate, and it takes like the piss out of liberals, and like basically Liz Lemon's as racist and like greedy as the Republican counterpart in Alec Baldwin, which is just very appropriate commentary for these times, in my view.
Yeah. Sometimes Tina Fey stumbles upon, I think, a more profound critique than she is even going for. From
when you're on the NBC, well, no, nothing. I wasn't going to say anything.
Ooh.
Anyways,
no, I just mean it's hard to find like critiques like that on mainstream cable. That's all I was going to say.
Did I ever tell you guys how much I love Saturday Night Live? I find it hilarious.
Oh yeah, I haven't missed an episode.
I loved SNL too.
I think Jamie's a little bit lost. Let's go to the phone. Oh, I didn't call into the phones. That's my mistake. Let me do that right now. Silly me. How could I mess up so much?
What do you like about SNL? Just wondering.
No. We're just we love everything that NBC. We love that everything NBC puts out, like every single show.
Wait, Jamie really is lost.
Thanks for carrying the interview about the CIA peacock.
Yes. right, exactly.
I get it now. Guys, I'm a night person. I'm going to be honest with you.
Ooh, this is a rarity because I just called into the phone system. No one's loaded in yet. So it looks like we have no calls.
Oh, interesting. Well, we were expecting one.
Shall we do a clip in the meantime?
We can do this Cuomo thing.
Jamie. Let's do this Cuomo thing because I know Jamie's excited to shit all over Cuomo.
Yeah.
Rhetorically.
Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know what he's into. But let me see here. I got my sound sheet.
We do know he's into nipple rings. I mean, I think that's pretty much verified at this point.
Yep. You know, it's a slippery slope, folks.
Jamie, are you all thirsting over Zaddy Cuomo?
Ew, please. How dare you?
That's the worst of all the libs.
No, it's bad. It's bad. So, okay. We got
Amy
Cuomo,
Rubin.
our nipple ringed leader of the state of New York. And let's do both the clips. Let's start with this one. Okay. So there's been a little confusion about what exactly the rules are and what exactly the plan is in New York City. Are schools open? Are they closed? Are you in a red zone? Are you in an orange zone? It is legitimately confusing. A reporter questioned him about this at a press conference yesterday, and here's his reply.
So what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're now going to override. We did it already. That's the law. An orange zone and a red zone. Follow the facts.
I'm still confused.
Well, then you're confused.
I'm confused, and
then I'll tell you what, Jimmy.
Parents are still confused as well. The schools in
they're
New York
not
City
confused.
tomorrow.
You're confused.
No, I think parents are very confused as well.
Read the law, and you won't be confused. So what are you talking about?
And I should note that this reporter is Jimmy Vielkind of the Wall Street Journal, a guy I actually went to college with. And he's one of those dudes who's like always wanted to be a reporter since he was like 5. He'd wear one of those hats with like the little piece of paper in it. And he's probably over the moon right now that he was able to do this.
Can you imagine, I mean, the lib reaction, or lib, I keep saying that, but left reaction, rightly so, if Trump was talking to reporters like this, as he normally does. Like, I just don't like the hypocrisy here. Cuomo is just as big of a bully in many ways as Trump is, and yet he's this darling for a lot of Democrats. I mean, how is that acceptable to respond to a reporter's questions in that way?
Well, he's a Democrat, you see. So
right, so it doesn't count. Yeah,
it's different.
I mean, the reporter was accurately stating that a lot of people are confused. I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, I don't even know how out of touch you need to be to not understand how confused people are over the rules. I mean, parents in New York City were basically tracking Bill de Blasio's every every time there was a message of his conference or a hint that he was going to say something, everyone was tuning in to see, are the schools going to be closed? Do I have to make plans for my children? Do I have to make plans for work? Do I need to take the day off? Do I need to take a week off? I mean, the idea that everyone knew exactly what was going on is just ludicrous. And I mean, and I know Cuomo and Bill de Blasio love to fight with each other, but the facts are that New York City is part of New York State, and Governor Cuomo is the man in charge of New York State. So, you know,
and he just is writing a book, and he's writing a book and capitalizing on all of this press that he gets as being the foremost authority on coronavirus. So you don't get to feel uppity and get all touchy when the reporter is asking you questions about the coronavirus response as the governor of one of the biggest states in the country.
About frankly mixed signals. Like, I mean, I think what is maybe Cuomo saying, well, we had these metrics set up and it shouldn't be a surprise to people that we closed. And like, I think there's some truth to that. Sam was saying like, we're going to hit point where we have to close these schools because of the metrics, but it's not clear to people at all, especially with the missed signals of like bars being open. And of course we know why, like fundamentally, this is also above Cuomo's pay grade because you need the federal government to start writing checks and putting money into states' pockets. Mm-hmm. So like, I do think that like, that is important to stress too, and you can call me the Cuomo defender if you want. But also, I mean, this is just horrible because Cuomo is responsible for anyone for this sort of like halfway. What should we do? What shouldn't we do? Thing, and it's like it's not consistent at all. So of course, people are going to be very confused.
No, and if they had just done a proper full shutdown and given people money countrywide in New York, we wouldn't be dealing with the second wave right now. But I understand a lot of people's frustration. Like I've got friends who work in bars who are losing their jobs right now and no health is coming. So, you know, I'm starting to understand.
Yeah. And to Matt's point, like, yeah, you can say that as Cuomo. There's no like political capital that's going to be lost now that you're critiquing a lame duck president's response and the fact that he and Republicans are blocking more in state and
right.
Well,
that's why we need to get to the second clip.
Yeah, let's do the second clip.
The second clip, because like this should be all about Mitch McConnell and Trump, and instead he's blaming people for not wearing masks. Right. Like here's this clip.
And just to make it very simple, if you socially distanced and you wore a mask and you were smart, none of this would be a problem. It's all self-imposed. It's all self-imposed. If you didn't eat the cheesecake, you wouldn't have a weight problem. It's all self-imposed.
Okay.
You had to go to work during a pandemic, you asshole, for jobs that would fire them later, like a month later.
If your father wasn't governor, you wouldn't be governor.
Listen, maybe in other states where the rate of transmission is much higher and people aren't following the guidelines, you could make an argument that partially it's because people aren't listening. But in New York State, where we're talking about that threshold that hit, by the way, for people who aren't in this state and may not be familiar, the threshold that shut this state, New York City schools down, is a 3% threshold. Like when you're talking 3%, I mean, you're pretty much at the point where everyone seems to be doing everything. And of course, you're going to have a certain number of percentages based on just people having to go to work. I mean, that's where the failure is at this point. Schools, which are closed, I believe the percentage is under 1%, which makes it even more ridiculous that the schools closed first. I was reading how in many European countries, they've gone on lockdown again, which their new lockdown closes bars, restaurants, and those sorts of establishments that aren't essential, but it keeps the schools open. So here in this country, we're doing it in reverse.
I mean, don't you think that has something to do with the fact that teachers have really good unions and service workers don't?
And I think it's fundamentally the money problem too, right? Like it's these businesses, and it's like I mean we get it, right? Like I don't want to see. I've seen bars close that like I don't expect to ever come back, that I've loved since I've lived in Brooklyn here, and I hate it. But fundamentally, like if like this is what capitalist priorities do to you. We didn't shut down things enough to have a school session this year, and so now we're just going to cancel school and instead do bars and like Best Buy. I mean, great.
Oh, but there's still a lot of rules that they're going to enforce on the bars, so a lot of them will probably fail anyway.
Right, exactly.
The worst of both worlds.
You don't save anything.
Though, I see
just a slow bleeding out.
I see your point in bringing up like the teachers' unions, Jamie, which obviously are integral and very important. But I also feel like that's not really the issue here, because I feel like that's actually what a lot of like the deniers and the anti-lockdowns and believing coronavirus is a myth people, they actually jump to blaming the unions as the reasons the schools are shutting down.
Well,
I mean,
the unions are doing the right thing.
No, right. But I actually don't really, I mean, if there's really no fight going on there, you don't think if there was something there that de Blasio or Cuomo would fight that? I mean, I don't know how much, I mean, they certainly have some sway over the decision, but I don't think they're the,
I think it just comes down to profit incentive for restaurants, bars, and
right.
there isn't one for schools.
Teachers have done quite a lot of agitating too around this issue.
Right, but when it comes down to it, the local and state government need to pretend they're doing something, and to close the restaurants would be a negative look for them, because obviously there's one there to help the people who wouldn't have work, who work at restaurants and bars. But closing the schools, look, we're doing something, and the teachers are fine; they have their jobs and their salary.
Well, it could be both at once too, couldn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think it's one or the other. I don't know how much it has to do with that, though. But it definitely is both.
Well, we'll put a pin in that.
I mean, Josh Barro certainly wants to blame the unions as if they're like holding Cuomo's feet to the fire. I mean, yeah, I think that I get why Binder, you also want to stress that part, because I think they are using this to come after unions. This moment,
I mean, I've seen
like this next austerity stuff.
I've seen a lot of rhetoric online, especially from Manhattan, well-to-do Manhattan parents blaming the teachers unions for the shutdown, and not the fact that it's simply the easiest thing for de Blasio and Cuomo to close down, which would have the least blowback. I mean, so you piss off a bunch of parents. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, really.
Well, Well, I mean, just back to Cuomo's framing there, though, like, look at that, like, personal first of all, look how disconnected he is from the realities of who's actually being most disproportionately affected by COVID-19. I mean, it's like 4 times as more likely if you're Latino or Black that you're contracting coronavirus. And a lot of that is because those workers are disproportionately a part of essential work, service work, things like that. And so they're forced to go and participate in this system because we aren't paying people to stay home.
Yeah, they're not being dumb.
Right. He's shaming people for some sort of like individual responsibility thing where I'm like, look at that kind of neoliberal framing there. I mean, he's completely a part of the class of Democrats that have bought in to Republicans' personal responsibility framing, as opposed to just looking at structures and incentives and economics purely from the federal government and state government.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Emma. It is an infuriating example of the neoliberal ideology made manifest. And it's actually a really good analogy, right? Because we know that people are not obese because, these people have weak willpower or whatever. The state and the policy made by the state is directly implicated in things like food deserts. So don't go saying that it's on the people when it's actually the policy. And it's exactly the same thing with COVID.
And I would just say, I get criticized every once in a while on Twitter for going after Nancy Pelosi too much and not Mitch McConnell. But you know
and on
what?
This show.
What? Sorry, on this show? Yeah, exactly.
And on this show.
Yeah. But like, you know what? This signal needs to be sent from Democratic leaders, like in governor positions, that this is a Mitch McConnell Republican problem. Like that needs to be the message. And like, you can't blame the left for not, just train all their fire on McConnell, because frankly, McConnell does not give an F what we say.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's just, I get that stuff from, like, my family all the time. Like, well, we're critiquing the people who are supposed to be on our side and trying to get them to make their own case, which seems like it's the biggest ask imaginable of the Democrats.
All right.
Word.
All right, let's go to the, I guess in closing, screw you, Andrew Cuomo, screw you.
Yeah.
No, really, the guy is, I hope he gets appointed to something in Biden's administration, because that's the only way I see him bowing out here in
relinquishing power.
Yeah, because otherwise we're stuck with this guy until he decides he doesn't want to run anymore, I think.
If I had a nickel for every person who's asked me, how do I explain to my parents that Cuomo is bad? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He has the way he has successfully been able to rewrite everything. And this is before, like, COVID definitely like made his stature skyrocket. But even before that, though, this guy has successfully been able to really hide in plain sight every terrible decision he has made. And somehow portray himself as some sort of progressive hero to normie Dems and moderate Democrats and centrists. Yeah. I don't understand it. It's like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's definitely a big problem, but particularly I think, with him having his eye on higher office. I do think, and I guess I'll put on the Cuomo hat, I guess, for today, the Cuomo defender hat, because I think certain parts of the left emphasize like how terrible the New York response was, like as if it was equally as bad to like red state response. And I get why, like the early stuff with the nursing homes and hospice stuff, that was horrible decision, right? But if you actually look at the numbers, there is a difference between, like, because I went through the COVID here in New York, and I also know people in North Dakota, and there's a pretty qualitative difference. So this is COVID cases at the beginning of it, and you can see the blue states, Massachusetts and Connecticut, early hit. But if you go through the most cases, like, it really sorts out into these red states. And even the ones that aren't, that like Illinois, right, surrounded by red states. And I would also go to fewest cases here, and this is the most recent fewest cases. Per million, New York actually isn't horrible.
Well, we also knew less when the initial response happened, right?
So, like, I think Cuomo should definitely not be writing a book about how amazing their response was. But compared to, like, the rest of this country, like, and a novel virus hitting New York, first, I do think there's an over-reliance on saying that Democratic governors are as bad as Republican governors, just to make an argument here. So I don't know. I think this sort of stuff is.
No, I totally
hate
agree
to
with
defend
you.
Cuomo, but I
Yeah.
just think it's kind of important to be aware of.
Okay.
Right.
Also, I
don't think Cuomo is as bad in terms of the COVID response, but he definitely is taking way too much undeserved credit.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Just one more thing on the teachers, because I feel like I'm not making this up. So I just Googled a little and yes, I remember. NYC teachers did threaten to go on strike if schools reopened without more COVID-19 protections. So I feel like they're throwing their weight around a little bit in ways that service workers maybe can't.
Yes, and
that was at the beginning
agree.
of the year. Yeah.
But I'd also stress, I would also just say, like, it's good too. Like, right. Like that. I mean, obviously if we had the teachers union could dictate all of policy, they would probably close other things before the schools before.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm saying that they are doing the right thing.
Exactly.
And it would be good if service workers had that kind of power as well to force both a total shutdown, not just until 10 p.m., and, this would have to happen on a nationally coordinated scale, most likely, but actual money for the people who work in these places, because a lot of people who work in bars and restaurants are not on the books and are not eligible for normal unemployment.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to, let's see if this works. This should work. 908. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Evan from New Jersey. I called again about last week. Had a little bit of something for everyone, and I got a little bit of something for everyone again.
Everyone here, Evan from New Jersey?
First,
hold on one second. Everyone here, Evan? Emma, Jamie, Matt, You guys here? Okay, just making sure. Okay, go ahead, Evan.
Perfect. So first off, very quick, Matt, best friend of Nancy Pelosi, Binder, she and Schumer, unless something radically changes, and again, we have Schumer saying some of the right things now, get ready for President Tom Cotton in 2024. So just be ready. I
think you're giving way too much credit to Tom Cotton.
Yeah.
That guy's not going to be president. That guy is the Scott Walker of
Harvard
2024. Tom. Everyone's gonna, just like Scott Walker in 2012, and everyone was talking him up as the future of the Republican Party. He came with a bang and left very quickly with a whimper. I think Tom Cotton will have the same trajectory. He's certainly horrible, and he's certainly trying to take the extremist Republican mantle and the mantle of focusing on cancel culture issues and things like that. But I just don't think there's any appeal there, especially when we're talking about a party that loves the pomp and circumstances of Donald Trump.
Yeah, the movement's going to be looking for a new head, but I don't know if it's going to be Tom Cotton.
Yeah, like I would classify Cotton as an authoritarian in terms of, like, I don't think he really trusts the base of the Republicans, whereas I would say Trump is more of a fascist, and that, like, he gets advantage in the party because of that base. I think Tom Cotton is kind of, I mean, him and Josh Hawley both are like Ivy League guys, so I don't know what the hell.
Trump does have contempt for the base as well, though. Oh my God.
Yeah, but
he's willing to use them as like a vehicle. Like he definitely, like, yeah, he hates them and despises them, but like I don't think he's not afraid at all to like froth them up. Yeah. Like I think Cotton is really just kind of like trying to.
Also, Trump has the background where they view it as, look at this guy who's better than all of us, and everything he's giving away just to try to help us out. Like that's how, like, I don't know if anyone else could pull that off. Like that's really how they view him. Like they really, like, the Republican base, not only does Trump like crap on them, they think it's warranted. Like they truly think Trump is a better person than they are, and that he is like giving up his life just to help themselves, us poor schlubs. Like they literally look down on themselves in an effort to prop Trump up. It's incredible to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, I do worry what would happen if we got a person at the head of this movement who is better at fomenting like an actual street movement, because right now it's mostly like Trump's got fans, but they engage with him pretty much as fans. They might go to a rally, they might vote for him, but they're not out there beating people up in the streets. That's a very tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the people who support Trump. And a different kind of dictator who's able to really harness that popular energy could be very dangerous.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And just on the COVID stuff, you guys have been doing an awesome job recently. Because how can we not look at it? But just a couple different comparative things to look at. When we were closing down originally, this is going back a little bit in May or in March, we had 18,000 cases. And just to look at that from the onset, to look at where we are now, where we're finally starting to cancel schools in some places, and hopefully throughout the U.S., we're about to hit tenfold of that. Now, it's not like, we have these vaccines, potentially coming out that could be helpful, but, there's production issues. But when you're thinking of something tenfold, you're thinking of a different monster. And I just for anyone listening and, ultimately, to anyone here with any family in any of these, anywhere in the States, just do everything you can to share, to really promote a virtual Thanksgiving and try a virtual holiday process if that's at all possible, because at the end of the day, we should be trying to make sure more people live than not, especially with this unavoidable death. So yeah, I had some other stuff to share, but that kind of, I think I'll leave on that and let you guys take it away. So thanks.
All right. Thanks for the call. And I see I've successfully moved this conversation away from blaming Nancy Pelosi in any which way. Success. No, but listen, I absolutely agree that the Democrats are already, screwing this all up. I mean, even if nothing but just all they could provide right now are words. That seems like the bare minimum they could do, and they're failing at even that aspect of it.
Yeah, word.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit skeptical that the Biden administration is going to do what they have to do to solve this crisis. I would love to be wrong, right? But even something like student debt cancellation, which they have the power, but the president has the power to unilaterally do by an executive order. I mean, this is the guy who voted for the bill to make it impossible to discharge student debt in bankruptcy. I was just talking to Mike from PA about this last night. Like, do we really believe that he's going to change his mind when he is deeply committed to the idea that debt is sacrosanct? I don't know.
I mean, maybe to the tune of $10,000. Should we?
Right.
Sorry. Should we play this Tom Cotton clip about Thanksgiving while we're on the topic of this guy?
Sure. That's very smart, Matt. Nice segue. Absolutely. Let's do that.
So yeah, here's Tom Cotton, being a baby.
Now the Thanksgiving season is upon us, and once again, we have much to give thanks for. But this year, we ought to be especially thankful for our ancestors, the Pilgrims, on their 400th anniversary.
Our ancestors.
I'm sorry, that's just on their 400th anniversary.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Our
That's
ancestors. Yeah, and what about the Native Americans in this country?
That's the point, is I exactly right. Like I would make a case for a certain type of, patriotism, but that includes looking at Squanto as our ancestor too, not just these psycho, Puritans that frankly, just to get into this before Tom Cotton goes on a little bit more, we started celebrating Thanksgiving during the Civil War as something to unify us, but it was basically the Northeast saying, hey, we're the real America, right? There was all sorts of different colonies. There was New Amsterdam, Virginia, and, Puritans had some to say over the Virginia ones because that was more of a slave society, but it also wasn't fair or anything at all. The Mayflower Compact was only men who got to vote in that, right? And that's the
landowning men, right? Was that the Mayflower? Or maybe that was just the initial constitution of who could vote.
Right, because it was men who came over, and it was there was some other men who weren't Puritans, they were more the piratical types. But the ones who took the compact, they were I think they were definitely like more wealthy than the typical like Englander was. They were very educated there, and so yeah, it was a very elitist thing. It wasn't like we're going to let we're half workers, and so we're going to let them have an equal vote. That's not remotely what this is. And so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to let Tom go a little bit more.
Their faith, their bravery, their wisdom places them in the American pantheon.
Now, imagine saying words like pantheon and then saying also this is not a myth, but anyway.
Alongside the patriots of 1776, the pilgrims of 1620 deserve the honor of American founders. Sadly, however, there appear to be few commemorations, parades, or festivals to celebrate the pilgrims this year.
Wait, hold on. There's few Thanksgiving literally there's the entire U.S. culture is about watching this one parade on Thanksgiving Day that's been held for how many decades?
No one wants to wear those little hats. No one wants to wear those funny little hats. Sorry.
It's also funny that he can't even pretend that Thanksgiving celebrates the Native Americans as well as the Pilgrims, right?
Yeah, right. It's them on the boat before they even got there for Thanksgiving.
Like this is the myth. This is the myth of Thanksgiving, right? That the Pilgrims and Indians getting along, no genocide happening here, and he can't even commit to that myth enough to say it and pretend he believes it for a second. Because guess what? It's not true, and he knows that.
Right. Well, that's why Tom Cotton and all of right-wing media, the Federalists and everyone today is talking about the Mayflower Compact. But yeah, the Mayflower Compact isn't Thanksgiving. That's the two different historical events. The Mayflower Compact is like this compact they took on the boat to say, hey, we can't get all the way to Virginia, so let's stop here in Massachusetts.
Right.
And also come together democratically. In a sense, it's way more. Say this about the Mayflower Compact: it's way more democratic than the current Republicans are, in terms of sanctity of votes and stuff. Even though it was exclusive, but anyway, here we go.
As revisionist charlatans of the radical, perhaps in part because revisionist.
Okay. Also, sorry. There's no parades because of coronavirus. It's not the leftists have finally won the war on Thanksgiving this year.
But this is what we're seeing now. They've moved on from war on Christmas. It's more just like culture war nonsense that isn't connected to actually anything that affects people politically. Like at least the left's culture war stuff is about race and things that are connected to improving people's lives. Like this is just made up nonsense.
That said, after the rev, we are not going to celebrate Indigenous Genocide Day. Sorry.
No, yeah, it's going to be Indigenous Peoples Day.
Also, a small addendum to what he's saying. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade actually is still going on. It's just going to be a bit different. Like they're actually still putting one together to air on television.
That's so stupid.
Yes, exactly. So, and look, they put up the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center too. And talk about, New York's rising coronavirus rate of infection. We're literally going to put that giant Christmas tree that attracts thousands upon thousands of people each day to that super small, cramped alleyway of space in Rockefeller Center. But no, we got to uphold these traditions. It makes what Tom Cotton's talking about even more ridiculous. In the face of a once-in-a-century global pandemic, the United States of America is still going out of their way to do these things just to keep the traditions alive.
Yeah, but just for the record, we are going to change this this culture. Only after we give the land back to the Native Americans are we really allowed to celebrate I say our, like my ancestors did this. My ancestors came through Ellis Island, but sure, the white man's relations with them.
I legit had an ancestor on the Mayflower, so I'm definitely.
I want to get to this later, but I wonder if Cotton did too. There's a candidate, but let's continue with Cotton.
Yeah. Perhaps in part because revisionist charlatans of the radical left have lately claimed the previous year as America's true founding. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Pilgrims and their compact, like the founders and their declaration, form the true foundation of America. So count me in Coolidge's camp. On this anniversary, a century ago, he proclaimed, "It is our duty and the duty of every true American to reassemble in spirit in the cabin of the Mayflower, rededicate ourselves to the Pilgrims' great work by re-signing and reaffirming the document that has made mankind of all the earth more glorious.
Yeah, okay, that's enough of that.
Shut up.
I just want to point out there was a minister named John Cotton in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and he was the one who banished Roger Williams to Rhode Island because Roger Williams was saying things like, hey, the king can't just decide this is our land with what we call patent. We actually need to be fair and deal with the Native Americans. And so they're like, yeah, go to Rhode Island, please. So yeah, that I don't know if Tom Cotton is related to that John Cotton, but I could see where this sort of imperial authoritarianism comes from if he is descended from that John Cotton, who was also where Cotton Mather, people might know that name. That's where that name comes from.
Gotcha.
Wait, looking it up
Be
now.
surprised.
I wonder if he is. That's a great point, Matt.
I don't remember which one of my relatives was supposedly on there, but I'm related to Thomas Hooker, the general from the Civil War, who is fabled to have originated the term hooker when women were following him around as a part of the Civil War. He was a Union guy, so
damn.
I don't know if that's real, but that's on my dad's side. That's kind of family lore.
I was able to find. He might not have been. I was able to find a piece from Isha of Historically, the podcast, where she traced Tom Cotton's genealogy, and the earliest Tom Cotton relative, John Cotton, died in 1741 and bequeathed his enslaved persons to his children. In North Carolina, it seems.
Oh, okay. So he's just from a more slave-friendly part of the colony.
Right. Yes. Yes.
He's
slaver-friendly, I should say. Yeah, I really don't think so. I don't think this Thanksgiving thing, I think that's elitist, honestly, and I think that's perceived as, first of all, it originally was, right? This is the whole New England is better than, you hillbilly North Caroliners. I don't think that's what Trump's doing.
Yeah, I mean, the scary aspect of Tom Cotton is he's a legitimate fascist, not just a bumbling one. So the fact that he's definitely running for 2020 in 2024, I mean, he was campaigning in New Hampshire for Donald Trump, 11 days before the election, and was meeting basically with Republican bigwigs and saying, yeah, this is definitely for Trump's reelection for sure. When clearly he's laying the groundwork for 2024. But I don't know if I see him getting that far in the primary either. It's just the prospect that he could is terrifying.
Yeah, I agree, but I just think his the way he delivers his personality, his charisma. I mean, I can't imagine the Republicans. I mean, that's basically what I'm going on here, because that's clearly what matters to a Republican Party candidate. I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it.
Bye.
Also, Tom Cotton, he was a columnist when he was at Yale, and all those are still online. And there's a funny one where he basically says the internet's not going to really amount to much. So.
I love those. I love people like the insufferable Republicans like Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton, who went to Ivy League universities and then tried to characterize themselves as these populist, people, leaders of the right or whatever. It's
amazing
so badly
with
done.
Holly too. Yeah.
It's just, I mean, Cruz, you're telling me that guy's really actually goes hunting, please.
This is a clip for another day, perhaps, or when you're at home. But there's an interview that David Bowie did in the 90s where he predicted not just what the internet would become, but social media. He knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, man. I got him right here.
Yeah, he was the man.
Let's go to the phones again. I have to step away for a quick second to get the door. So I'm going to get the phone lines going and you guys can take this call. I'll be back in a second.
Right.
Just
sure thing.
Get the call. 954. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Thomas from Richmond.
Hi, Thomas from Richmond. What would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, I want to drag that Paul Fourth Reich guy?
Sure. Oh no. Okay, so Matt muted himself, and so he accidentally muted the caller.
Oh shit! So caller, I think you can hear us. Don't bother talking right now because we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Maybe I will wait till.
Oh, did I just accidentally mute the caller? My bad.
Yeah, you
okay,
did.
go ahead, caller. Start from the beginning. My bad.
There you go.
Oh, hey. So, I'm a veteran. I was in the Navy. I went as an officer kind of after the financial crisis. And I had a college degree. I just couldn't get a job. So I was in from 2012, 2017. I kind of take particular issue with veterans, especially veterans who want to misuse their service or treat their service as a branding exercise. And this is kind of true for like Abigail Spanberger or any of these like Raytheon people who think because, you know, they help to overthrow governments overseas that gives them a privileged position in America to opine on stuff and sort of leverage that as some sort of like enormous sacrifice that they made.
Right.
I mean, it's not to say that, you know, he was a combat veteran in Iraq. I'm sure he did some stuff that, you know, is worthy of at least some admiration if you can detach yourself from the whole, you know, invasion of Iraq part. But like the dude is he's not representing like the majority of veterans who are poor, who are from working class backgrounds, who are disproportionately from the Midwest and the South, who joined the military out of, you know, this sort of like propagandized notion of American exceptionalism. And it's just so clear that this dude just doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't care about any of the history. He doesn't even care about the sort of like corrupt background of the Iraq War. And he just sort of is leveraging this as some sort of like CEO like booster thing where he can start his own podcast and, you know, go on the Daily Show and sort of peddle like mediocre bad politics. And, you know, we have enough, you know, bald dudes who lie to their friends about taking human growth hormone and testosterone therapy to have yet another douchey bald veteran trying to leverage their service as a way to propagandize the American people even more about what these wars are about.
Damn. I mean, you're like you went in harder than I even would have, but I think you have the clout to do so because I'm sure, like, I don't know how long you served and the kind of people you served with, but I'm sure some of these things must have bothered you, like, culturally.
I mean, yeah, there's always people like him. I mean, I kind of did some digging on his wiki to see who he was because he reminded me so much of like these, you know, the military is just like hierarchy sort of reified because, you know, people have to call you sir if you're an officer, which is really bizarre that we're still doing that. But I mean, whatever. I was an officer. I guess I can't complain. But like he just seemed to me like he was some dude who went to like West Point or the Naval Academy or something, or like the Citadel. Like those are the people in the military who are almost always coming from like an upper class background. And they're the people who get upset when you don't call them sir, which is really kind of bizarre.
Yeah, well, he felt he had the authority to tell the left how the left should, when he's not a Democrat, right? Like how the left should behave.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what's really sad?
But then, you know,
you know what's really sad? The Democratic Party, as currently constituted and led, cares more about that guy's opinion than they care about AOC's.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, the troops don't care though, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys brought this up, but like in 2016, if I remember correctly, Bernie won the military absentee primary. And
he did very well.
Fact,
he did very well this year too, or this in 2020 as
yeah,
well.
And I know for a fact he got the most donations in 2016 from military abroad. I don't know if that's true in 2020. I was in the military during the 2016 run, and kind of like I couldn't really. It's hard to pay attention to the news when you're like working 80 hours a week and on deployment and stuff like that. But I mean, I was able to follow it enough to know that like my ship was very enthusiastic about Bernie, for example. And it's so bizarre. And yeah, you're right, Jamie. Like the current Democratic Party isn't interested in any of these conversations, but this is just another layer of this, historical analysis that we provide, or that this sort of politics lends itself to. They're not interested in that stuff. They're not interested in the statistics or the facts or the class makeup of the institutions in which they're using to buttress their argument. So it's not surprising that these people exist, but he still sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always flummoxed by and amazed by the laziness of centrism, and like how a lot of people who are centrist feel morally and intellectually superior because they took two poles and decided to plant themselves right in the middle instead of actually taking a side. Like it's in my opinion, one of the laziest things you can do, as opposed to looking at each issue on their merits and making a determination about where you come out. Like there's this kind of self-aggrandizement that goes along with it, where you really feel like you're the one who gets it because you're not on either side, you're right in the middle, right? Like that's some of the vibe that I got from him too.
Yeah. That may be a part of it, but the military definitely cultivates this sort of like technocratic behavior. I mean, almost all these officers that leave the military after doing a career, they go become some like douchebag VP at some like toxic extractive company, or they go work like Pete Buttigieg, and they go work to fix bread prices with McKinsey, or they go work for Deloitte, or they go work for some defense contractor that's going to, lobby aggressively to keep the United States in a constant state of warfare. I mean, even the elected officials that we have in Virginia, for example, there was a letter that was published a couple months ago where every single elected official in Virginia, Ohio, and Connecticut was like begging the military to request more money from Congress because they weren't allocating enough to the kind of defense projects that were located in their states. And it was because the DoD had decided that those particular programs were no longer applicable to the future of war. But it doesn't matter, right? Like the Congress people in those states are only interested in it as a jobs program. And it's pretty screwed up that the jobs program happens to be a permanent state of warfare where we're, picking whoever is the lowest on the totem pole and knocking them off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you bring up a very good point that there is real class consciousness in the military, and there's potential for more class consciousness in the military. And, the left ignores that at its own peril. And it's definitely not helping when smug liberals act like everyone in the military is just like a mouth foaming manga chud, we need these folks on our side for so many different reasons. We need the working class people in the army on our side if we want to build a mass working class movement. And if, God forbid, we ever need to defend against a coup of, say, a democratically elected leftist leader, well, we're definitely going to need them then too. And looking at what just almost happened, but Trump was too lazy and stupid, I don't think it's that far out of the question.
Right.
Yeah, and it's so easy to understand once you're in the military, and that's why it's so offensive that this guy exists, this bald Paul guy, because once you're in the military, you can't deny that there's a class component to I mean, like I said, the hierarchy is reified.
I mean, they literally
people.
Yeah, this is literally, it's incentivized to be a place for kids or young people who don't necessarily have a set future and have all of these financial benefits to go into and get PTSD and be maimed and maybe killed. So there's a huge class element.
You don't even have to. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's an enormous class element, and you don't even have to go to combat to have problems reintegrating into society afterwards.
Right.
Because you're fed this constant propaganda about your exceptionalism, and then you re-enter the sort of like brute reality of your capitalist workforce, and no one cares. And no one cares that you worked 80 hours a week, or that you went through a divorce, or you're like me and you spent your 20s basically like completely single and sexless because you were constantly working.
Sorry, man.
Much better now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm everything.
Yeah, but you
Much
have like
better now.
immense
I had to do
self-awareness.
some makeup,
So
but
there you go.
I'm
Basically-
sorry, Emma, I missed that.
Basically, what you're all saying is that I need to go back and I didn't see this interview. It's worth listening to, I guess, right?
It was ridiculous, but I just said you have immense self-awareness, so like you should be really, proud of that.
Yeah,
I'm all about
I mean, it's really
validation.
hard when you're all. Thank you so much. When you stand a lot of watches at night, you spend 5 hours staring into the dark sea in the middle of nowhere, and you kind of get at peace with your thoughts after a while.
You're the man. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for the call.
Later.
Thank you for your politics.
Yeah.
I gotta go
We
back and
stand
listen
good
to
politics.
this.
No, you don't.
No, it's not even worth it
Oh
for
my
the
God.
fun. It's not even fun.
It was
no?
just pretty. I don't know, Matt. You want?
It's funny, Matt, because Sam's mic was the secondary mic. So whenever Paul spoke, it muted Sam. So if you want to see it from that angle of it, it was kind of amusing.
Yeah.
And the guy spoke a lot. Spoiler alert.
I'm still not convinced that he wasn't a David Feldman character.
Like there are interviews where we were, throughout Majority Report history where you listen to and you're smacking yourself across the face, like you're smacking your forehead, like, oh my God, what's going on? But you wouldn't miss it for the world. For example, the Walter Block debates.
It wasn't that amusing.
Okay.
It is nice to see Sam punching someone to his right and not communists like me. Hashtag bully the right people.
Sam doesn't do that.
Never. He's never done that.
I honestly don't know. Let's go back to the. Oh, did you guys see these any of these clips from the Giuliani conference that was just happening?
I mean, I saw that his hair was melting.
Yes,
and apparently Trump's inviting the Michigan folks to the White House to try to get them to reconsider.
Right, and he apparently compared one of his legal arguments. He used a comparison to My Cousin Vinny, which is always a winning argument if you have a real. I mean, has Giuliani seen the movie? I mean, does he know what the whole premise of that movie is?
I don't. What is the movie?
You never seen My Cousin Vinny?
It's been on TV a lot recently.
Great.
It's a wonderful movie, Matt.
You gotta
go
watch
see
it.
Well, I got the clip of this shit coming off of Rudy's head at this press conference. So here, we'll share this. This is Rudy at this press conference. And it's his hair dye.
Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. We more than double.
So that's what people are talking about, in addition to like the ongoing coup attempt that they're trying. And I think it is. I think it makes me sick. Like it's. I mean, I don't predict these things. To predict there's not going to be a coup, to me, it doesn't do anybody a whole lot of good. I think probably not if I had to bet. But like, I think this entire case is actually really sickening. It's funny, these occasional moments, but like for instance, the landscaping thing is going to be a lot funnier when Trump's on his ass and not in the White House still. And like, I don't know. I think it's pretty gross what the Republicans are doing on behalf of this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a complete exposure of the fragility of our institutions and like how one side of political thought is just completely authoritarian and they'll follow what that leader says. Like, say what you want about, I guess the Democratic Party. I don't think they would go along with Joe Biden making these kinds of accusations. I just don't.
Yeah,
the thing too is that even the Republicans who pretend that this is all silly when asked by reporters and that they don't even want to pay it any attention, like that very act keeps it going. Like they refuse to even like denounce it. They just scoff at it as if they're better than now. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't do anything.
Yeah. But anyway, here's more of the hair dye coming off of Rudy's head.
There's more.
Right up.
It's on both sides.
So,
jeez.
What I'm telling you is supported by evidence.
What evidence?
Oh,
we're going to have to present things because of the procedures that exist.
Geez, it's like it looks like he's bleeding from the ear, like black bile is coming out of him. I've long opined that he's just filled with some sort of like vampire blood or like sludge from the runoff from like an oil rig or something like that. But like, yeah, I mean he is really revolting. I don't like to make fun of people's physical appearances too much. But man, is that guy one of the grossest gremlins I've ever seen in a human body.
Right. You know, if this was to be, if a Democratic politician or operator was on at a press conference talking, and that started black goo started like going down the side of their face, I guarantee you there would all of a sudden be like they live esque type of conspiracies online that this person just accidentally outed themselves as a non-human and other from another planet, trying to steal our democracy and change everything and, you know, reverse the election and they're not even human. Like that would be the thing, I guarantee it.
Yeah,
so
he's a lizard.
It's amazing
person.
I am amazing that, you know, this is happening to Giuliani and they're just like, well, this very weird man speaks the truth. I mean, it's stunning.
But seriously, Matt, you gotta see My Cousin Vinny. Marissa Tomei is so amazing in it.
So good
in love with her.
Joe Pesci is, I think that's one of his best, honestly. I know people probably are gonna say, oh no, Goodfellas. And no, I think My Cousin Vinny is really where he shines. I mean, he's good in all those other ones, but
it's like a 23-year-old Marissa Tomei with like a 40-year-old Joe Pesci, and we're supposed to believe that they're a couple, and she's ridiculously hot, and we actually do believe it. Like they're both that good in it that we believe that those two human beings would be dating.
Mm-hmm. But the whole thing too is that he's a very bad lawyer without the actual credentials to be lawyering where he is over the case he's trying to preside over.
Well, he's successful in the like he's not, you know, I don't want
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Let's not ruin it. But a very bad movie to compare yourself to if you were trying to present yourself as a very serious established lawyer.
Yeah.
Because even though, like you said, with the spoiler, I mean, that's not really how you want to pull it off if you're trying to promote if you're trying to really stand in for your client and say he's got a case. Let's put it that way. Let's go.
And by the way, guys, like, what is with these Republicans and far right people dyeing their hair in this way? I mean, Lou Dobbs's hair is like this bizarre brown. Rudy Giuliani melting off his face. Trump, we all know. Like, it's okay to age. Never forget that either. I mean, it's okay to age folks. Like,
and there's no penalty for men, really. So just embrace
honestly,
it.
Honestly, I got to tell you guys, I get it.
Come on, Binder. Let's have a gray Binder.
I get it. Not even so much the graying of the hair, the losing of the hair. I get it. I would be
I totally get that. But
I'd be so distraught.
Well, you got a lot of hair.
I'm very lucky.
You're
very
blessed.
Lucky.
Yeah.
You got hair privilege.
Honestly, I'm about to be 32. To be honest, my hair lasted. I think I'm gonna, I don't think I'm balding, but it got me far enough. Like, as long as it got me through my 20s, like that's when I really needed it.
You got a girlfriend. Honest. You're set for life.
Yeah, there you go.
I need my hair.
You capitalized on the hair at the right time, Matt.
It's too much of who I am. I can't agree. Let's go back to the phones. I will go through a midlife crisis when I lose my hair. You guys will see a grown man melt down on a live stream. I guarantee.
I feel like it would have already happened. Matt, wouldn't it have already happened by now if it was gonna happen, right?
I mean, if it was gonna happen early, I guess yes. But I mean, I could still. I'm talking like if I lose my hair, even at like if I live to 85 years old, God bless me, and I lose my hair, I'd be very upset still.
It does seem like an important part of your vibe, I will say. Maybe more so than with most people.
It is essential to my to my existence.
I'm trying to imagine Matt Binder as like a shaved head goatee guy right now.
Oh, let me tell you, it's funny you say that. There was a Snapchat filter that does that, and I tried it out. And you don't want to see it. It is truly a sight to not behold. The people who do watch my live stream would immediately tune out the second they saw how I looked. It'd be over. Any semblance of a career doing this, God, thrown out the window. Let's go back to the phones. 718. Good area code, by the way. Where are you calling from?
What's good? This is Danny from Georgia, actually.
Oh, from Georgia? Huh.
Yeah.
How does that explain the area code?
A couple years ago.
Ah, okay.
I moved here a couple years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So you kept the old Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx number.
Since about 15 years now. So
hell yeah, 718 represent. All right, what's up? What would you like to talk about?
Most people keep their numbers. I've still got mine from childhood.
Yeah, Sam. Hey, I just wanted to talk about. I recently learned that a lot of my family voted for Trump this past election. I'm first generation American, and I learned that a lot of my immigrant family voted for him. So I'm still kind of trying to understand why, but it seems like definitely the socialism and fear mongering definitely drove them to vote for Trump. Despite all the
can I ask you what your background is? Like, what is your nationality? Where's your family from?
They're Southern American. They're from South America.
South America. Would you mind telling us what specific country?
Sure, Ecuador.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. I
didn't see it coming at all.
There are certain countries.
I thought it was.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. You finish. Go ahead.
I really didn't expect that. I thought, obviously I'm a little more informed than I think the average person, but just a basic definition of socialism and trying to say that Joe Biden is that, it just makes no sense. I never even thought that would be a possibility. And yeah, you're right. Definitely where people come from, their lived experiences shape their politics and all that and their response to that. But I really don't think it's that. I think it's just these talking points about socialism with no rebuttal whatsoever. Democrats, I understand Democrats are not socialists, but they can't even explain why they're not. And I think that, since they're definitely not going to offer anything material to people, it's just going to be a battle between rhetoric. And if one side's calling the other side socialist and the other side says, no, I'm not, which is basically just what Joe Biden did, that's not going to win. So if they don't want to do anything in terms of giving people, helping people, live with dignity, at the very least, can they explain to people why calling them socialist is just stupid, makes no sense whatsoever. Tell people, be honest with people, say, yeah, socialism means workers owning the means of production, and I have no interest in doing that. And of course, I'm simplifying this a lot, but I'm just trying to, I don't think ignoring socialism and just trying to talk about something else is the best way to win people who are just generally ill-informed and susceptible to this kind of fear-mongering.
Right, I absolutely agree. The whole Democratic Party plan to distance themselves from socialism has been, obviously, in the aspect they're taking it on as has been a failure because people still believe they're socialists, but the thing is, people are interpreting socialism as what Fox News and further right networks like Newsmax and OANN are explaining it as. You're going to lose that battle. You've lost that battle. That battle has been won by the right. It's over. So why not just correct the definition of socialism? Even if you're going to be truthful and then come out and say we are not that, even if that doesn't matter or whatever. What is the harm in correcting the definition of socialism?
Well, I had that debate. I had that debate with the Trump supporter that recently went viral again for some reason. I think it was because Soledad O'Brien retweeted it. But the Trump supporter was saying that Joe Biden is a socialist. And I said, well, why would you say he's a socialist? And she was like, well, because he betrays his country and turns his back on his race. And I was like, I don't think that's. And then he's like he's a billionaire. And he's corrupt. I said, well, I don't really that was her definition of why he's a socialist, which doesn't make any sense.
Can I ask what the class position is of your family? Are they business owners? Are they workers? Are they highly paid? Are they low paid?
They're lower class.
Yeah. Okay. What do they? What are their? What is their? You said it surprised you that they voted for Trump. So what is their history of politics? Were they politically interested before this? Were they not? Did you know them to watch any specific news programs? Give us a little bit more details if you feel comfortable telling us more.
Yeah, sure. So they mainly speak Spanish, and so they'll watch, Telemundo or any other noticias. But they're not going to talk about socialism, and so that's not very. I think that's not going to save us from any of this. But that's usually where they get their news. And the reason I say I was surprised is just because we've been pretty apolitical overall, and
are they online?
For granted that being part of the working class, they would realize that Republicans are terrible, actually.
Right, but all of those networks are capitalist too. Like those aren't like left-leaning networks at all.
I don't think those networks had anything to do with it though. What are they online a lot? Big Facebook users?
I don't think so, but I think moderately, based on like kind of the generation they seem to be on Facebook. But so that could be a part of it too. It could also be, I've come from a really big family, so I could have a couple of cousins, right, who are big Trump supporters, and I'm not aware of. They're talking about this stuff and kind of pushing these narratives about socialism and how Biden is this evil person or whatever. So that could be it. And what I'm thinking about, what I'm trying to put upon myself is just being more open about politics. I don't really like calling myself a socialist. I prefer to myself more of like an anti-capitalist. Everything I hear about capitalism, I don't agree with. So I think talking about that stuff would help. But coming from like a macro perspective, it kills me that Democrats are being allowed to be called socialists.
Can I say this though?
Pissed at that
it's
definition.
Not. I don't think it's about like the ideological argument being made. I think this is about a history of anti-communism. The CIA has been in Ecuador for like half a century, right? Like, I mean, I don't think the Democrats can simply like, frankly, as they're constituted now, like, I don't think they don't have the sway in these communities to overdo that programming. I think,
and not to mention American culture is also incredibly anti-communist.
Right, but people forget that like not only American culture is anti-communist, right? Like we should know that it's like we aren't the only bastion of it here.
Yeah, I think it's a
Matt,
little.
I understand that, Matt. But when you're calling Biden a communist, I feel like or socialist, it's like a totally different argument now.
Not really. Like, I mean,
there's gonna be that propaganda, but the definition of it. I mean, to call Biden a socialist, I don't even see on look around you could do that.
I think you should talk to them and see what their online habits are, because there have been reports that while everyone was focusing on misinformation and all sorts of claims of election fraud and all this other these conspiracies online, while the focus was on that on Facebook, Twitter, etc., for us here in the U.S. who speak English, this stuff started running rampant in other languages, and Spanish obviously being such a prominent language in the world. I've read many reports where Spanish language misinformation was completely ignored and not dealt with. I know for a fact that for some reason it keeps hitting me with WhatsApp, but what's the big application that's big in China and other Asian countries? Not WhatsApp, the one that was hit with TikTok when they do you guys recall? I'm having a mental block.
I don't know.
No, it's not that one, but one of those apps that's really big in China that people here use to connect with their family over there. There was apparently tons of misinformation running rampant there, which explained why here in Queens there was pro-Trump rallies that were majority attended by Asian immigrants, Chinese immigrants. It was it's something that I think got completely thrown under, just ignored because of how everyone was so focused on the English speaking English language, misinformation here. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's where they got a lot of it from, to be honest.
Well,
because
also,
if they're apolitical and they're not really paying attention to news and everything, then it got into what they normally do somehow. They didn't search it; it came for them.
Well, also the GOP did a lot of Hispanic outreach that the Democrats did not in a lot of places. I mean, we just talked about this the other day in Florida, I believe. And you could say, and counterposed against the results that Bernie got with Hispanic voters in the primary, I mean, there's probably slightly different cohorts of Hispanic voters coming out for the different candidates, I would say. As discussed, Hispanic people are not a monolith in any way, shape, or form, either racially or class-wise. But you do have to imagine that there is something else going on besides racism when heavily working class and heavily Hispanic counties that went for Bernie in the primary went for Trump in the general. Like, how do you explain that? And I don't think it's necessarily about socialism. It's just that is the message that reached them, because that is the outreach that was being done. But I have to imagine if you had a candidate who not only did outreach, but also spoke to people's material needs, right? Because Hispanic voters think that healthcare is really important. They think that jobs are really important, according to polls. I think you would probably do better.
Right.
And stop apologizing for the policies that you're running on, you know? I think rather than saying, oh, I'm not a socialist, here's what socialism means, blah, 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 blah. You can do what the Bernie types and the AOC types do, which is explaining what you actually stand for and saying, if that's socialism, then I'm a socialist. And P.S., that's a good thing. Right. Demystify it of its 100%. Scary content, you know?
Oh, and the app I was thinking of, the Chinese app, is WeChat. That's the big app that a lot of misinformation was flying around on.
I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you for everything that you guys do. You guys are a big part of my life, and I know a lot of other people, so please continue doing what you're doing and with that passion. But don't get along so well. That's not as fun to watch.
All right. There'll always be a minimum, like a base level guarantee that there will be a punks versus goths feud on this show.
That's just always bubbling under the surface.
Take care. Thanks for the call. Really great. You guys have anything you want to get to in mind, or do you want to go to another call? What are you guys thinking?
Dealer's choice.
All right, let's do another call, and then if we have a clip, we go to a clip.
There we go.
859. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, I'm Corey from Maryland. How are you?
Hi, Corey from Maryland. What's up? What would you like to talk about today?
I just kind of wanted to just, like the last caller was talking about his family. So I'm actually an adopted Asian American. I'm from South Korea originally. I was adopted when I was a kid. And so my parents are actually just white. So growing up in my household, it's interesting to see this dynamic play out as I've gotten older too. But it's clear that at some point, like the politics that my parents grew up with, they're Republicans, kind of veered off away from that. So like, you know, I'm pretty liberal and all that. And it's interesting that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just like a trend you can see in parents from certain states or not, but my parents, like, they voted Republican. And so, you know, that you already know who they voted for in the election. But when it came to the Kentucky governorship, they voted against Bevin. Or sorry, they voted against the last one, not Bevin. I'm blanking on him. No, it was
you're talking
Bevin.
about right.
Yeah, the former Kentucky governor, Matt Bevin. So I'm sorry, I blanked out there for a second. I followed this a lot. But so it's interesting when I see that dynamic play out is that they'll vote for Andy Beshear, a Democrat, over the Republican. And fundamentally, if Matt Bevin hadn't messed up as bad as he had, my dad is a teacher in Kentucky, if he hadn't dropped the ball as hard as he did, he might have still had my dad's vote, but he just did. And my dad, surprisingly, has been very happy with how Beshear has been handling the crisis and you know, the issues of COVID. So it's just weird to see that play out, that on the national level, my parents will vote Republican. They've always voted Republican. But on this more statewide thing, they will vote Democrat. And I just think that's crazy to see that play out.
There are a lot of people who do that, actually. It is bizarre, but
North Dakota used to do that.
It also kind of reminds me a little of let me just quickly, it kind of reminds me of the Northeast, where a lot of, in like, you know, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, like there's this fetishization of moderate Republican governors, and yet they'll vote blue nationally as well.
I mean, Vermont, of all places, has a Republican governor. That always amazes me. Vermont, of all places.
Yeah, and it's just, I noticed that, and I've been trying to just wrap my head around this, because it just seems, and I think this reinforces the importance of local and state politics, is that because these decisions do have long-term effects, because voting for Bashir will have long-term effects, and has had long-term effects on the state of Kentucky. I mean, the COVID crisis alone is really put Bashir in the headlights, essentially, and kind of will define his governorship, and at least the legacy of it. I don't know what the future holds for him, but I mean, his handling of it will definitely be the defining feature of it. And I just think that when, you know, I was really concerned about the national election too, because, you know, it was like, you know, I had healthy skepticism on Joe Biden pulling it out, because it was like, we kind of said the same thing 4 years ago, and we kind of know how that played out. But I think this, like, I guess it's just interesting to see politics play out like that, especially within my own family. And
no, I think your point is
hard to,
really,
like, wrap your head around that concept.
I think your point is really. Would you mind telling me what generation your parents are from? Like how old they are? You know, generally, you don't have to give an exact.
They're boomers.
Age.
They're boomers for sure.
Right. I think there is.
Dad's like in his mid-50s, mom's like early 60s.
I gotta ask again about the class position of them as well, because that matters a lot here.
Oh, Dad's a teacher, so we're like, I mean, if I'm being super generous, like low middle class, but we're probably lower class.
All right. I think what you're saying is actually why a lot of political strategy is going to change over the next couple of years, maybe a decade or so, because you see it with how the Democrats run in their campaign, like Joe Biden really focusing and centering on bringing us back to a place where we're all working together again, bipartisanship. And there's just this fetishism in older generations where, like, no, we need to, like, be right down the middle and have just as much Democrats as Republicans. And then they get together, work things out, and nobody's happy. That's the way it's supposed to be. Nobody's happy. Everybody's happy. That's how it's supposed to work. That's politics for you, baby. That's not how it's supposed to work. And for some reason, older generations think this. Maybe it's because there was a time where both parties worked together a little bit more than they do now, and they were able to get some of, you know, broader things that helped everybody, maybe, you know, in some areas. But it was not always like that, and it was never fully like that. And I think younger generations, like maybe young Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Z, they're seeing this. And I'm not saying we're not going to have a problem with Republicans in the future, but the fights are going to be a lot more clear. It's not going to be people want whoever's going to work best with everybody. No, it's going to be basically a battle between people who want progress and people who want to stay in their racist, xenophobic little worlds. I mean, you're going to see your Republican Party. You're seeing it with Trump. That's super just in your face. This is what we want. We're xenophobic. We're racist. We're sexist. This is who we are. And this is what we want. And Democrats are still playing this game of bipartisanship, unfortunately. So that's why, you know, we're losing somewhat. That's why we didn't, you know, that's why I think we're losing some of these down ballot races. People don't want that anymore. Maybe some older people do, but the next generations are onto this, and they know this whole era of bipartisanship was always bullshit to begin with.
Well, okay, let me just say,
and I think it really also emphasizes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't want to throw cold water on everybody, but I'm not sure how much of an optimistic lesson we can take from the fact that Bashir won this election, because he is not terribly liberal for Democrat. You know, his dad was governor too, and his opponent was just a flaming asshole, to the point where, you know, even people who might identify in a very partisan cultural way of Republicans were like, F that guy, you know? That said, any move to the left is a good one, even if it's just a few degrees to the left. But it is, and I think state politics and local politics operate a little differently than national ones, because people have a much closer connection to the local issues where somebody has, you know, effed them over or not effed them over. But I do worry that the Democrats are going to learn from this. I mean, to the degree that they learn things and don't just pretend that they learned certain things because it benefits their interests and ignore the things that don't fit in their worldview, that they're going to say, oh, well, see, we need to run moderates, and that's the only way we can win over the working class in these states, which I think just cannot be the goal, and it cannot be the strategy in the long term, you know?
Right. That too, and it's also just the play of it is like it's seeing my parents, because I'm adopted Asian American, and it's just conversation over politics gets interesting. It's never hostile, but it's hard sometimes to just tread that line, and I don't know. It is what it is. So it's just an interesting observation, is all really.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I think I've seen that in my parents, because North Dakota's occasionally had Democrat, especially when my parents were more Republican voters during like the Bush administration, they would also vote for the GOP or the Democrat senators.
Matt, I didn't know you were from North Dakota, or your parents were.
Yeah, but I am. My parents are. Yeah, everything's.
Wow.
Yeah, so. And it is bizarre, but I can say, like, I would love to have Bashir as governor of either South Dakota or North Dakota right now.
Right.
I worry sometimes that these voters who maybe took a chance on a Democrat, especially in a state like Kentucky, where there's just been so much economic devastation and so much extraction, I worry that they're going to see the Democrat doing, the same corporate policies and then be like, well, screw Democrats.
But I think his policy is better than that. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not in the Kentucky expert, but I think he expanded Medicaid or Medicare, and like this. I mean, his coronavirus response is remarkable compared to surrounding states. I think when
you add COVID into the mix, I think there's a bigger difference there for sure. And, the Medicaid expansion is not nothing, but it still only impacts a tiny fraction of the population. So, most voters, that might not be a factor for them. And you literally have to be destitute to get it. So it's not going to change anyone's circumstances from poor to not poor, Not saying that it's not good.
Right.
Thanks for the call.
Oh my God. I feel like I'm such a downer. I've been listening to too much Trillbillies. All they talk about, and these guys, they have really done their time working in NGOs, working for the Democratic Party, all sorts of stuff in Kentucky. And they just talk so much about all these, progressive, technocratic, economic development programs that just fail every single time. It's sad.
Do you guys want to get to this? Did Sam listen to this? Any of these? This Feinstein clip or the Brian Kilmeade clip?
Let's do the Kilmeade.
Let's do Kilmeade.
I think the Feinstein clip I sent is just like there's not really any sound. She's just like in the crowd of staffers in the hallways of the Senate building, not wearing a mask.
The only one that made a mask. I mean, she's horrible.
The only one. Yeah.
Unless Emma, do you want to be the Feinstein defender?
Sure. Let's we can do Feinstein really quickly too if we want.
I guess it's not that big of a deal though. She's only 85 years old or something like that.
Well, I can lead into this story. We could do it for like 5 minutes if you guys want.
Cool. Let's do Feinstein then.
Yeah, cool. So Dianne Feinstein is not having a good 2020 in terms of her Democratic bona fides or bona fides, however you say it. She obviously gave Lindsey Graham an unnecessary boost by embracing him and praising his handling of the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. And now she's in the middle of the Senate hallways without a mask, and she's in her 80s as everyone around her is wearing a mask. So this is a video of it. So yeah, not really any audio here, but like, it's just a great example of the entitlement, the just complete lack of accountability. And like, she sees the cameras there. I mean,
They don't give a fuck. I mean, California Republicans, what the hell is going on? I mean, this is the original Pelosi argument. If we remember Pelosi out at a hairdresser's.
That's a little bit different, though. I'm going to continue to argue that's a bit different, but let's continue with the current event.
Well, and then we have Gavin Newsom photographed at
California Democrats. You mean, right, Matt?
Right, exactly. Yeah, like it looked like a wine cave above ground. I mean, I know that's a bit of a oxymoron, but it reminded me of the Pete Buttigieg wine cave. And just like, I mean, take it seriously, guys. Like, I don't know.
For people who don't know, the governor of California went out to some big dinner or something like that, right? That's what happened. And then this also came out that the Democrats were planning in the Congress were planning some big dinner, and on top of that,
inaugural ball or whatever.
Right. We need our pomp and circumstance in the middle of the pandemic. It's incredibly important.
On top of that, I was reading that there were a handful of, I'm not sure if it was just Democrats or Republicans, but there were a handful of California lawmakers who took a flight to Hawaii for some big conference.
Yeah. So currently California, well, I mean, I think a lot of this happens too with these really wealthy coastal states when you have these massive Democratic Party machines. I mean, they churn out people like Dianne Feinstein who are not accountable and who behave like, I mean, we talked about Andrew Cuomo earlier in the show, who have like the demeanor and entitlement that is usually reserved for Republicans because they're not really being held accountable because their states always vote blue. And so they feel emboldened to behave in completely irresponsible ways, corrupt ways. And Dianne Feinstein's a great example of that.
Right. And of course, not wearing a mask is all Dianne Feinstein is bad on. Everything else she's
but again, like, this is the one issue the Democrats have the complete moral high ground on.
Right. And like someone like Feinstein messes it up completely.
This for the second time, because remember the insider trading thing at the start of coronavirus? Who was the first Democrat that came out? As Feinstein moving money too.
Right, of course.
Right. I mean, it's just it's not unbelievable, but it's just stunning that they wouldn't even if you're putting on the show. How do you not like? This is the simplest part of it all. Putting on the theatrics of
and she's talking closely to staffers and like, it's not like she's licking an ice cream cone walking down K Street. She's in the middle of an enclosed hallway and talking to other people. Come on,
right. Even if Dianne Feinstein is behind anonymous Twitter account Liberty 1776 sharing that recent Danish study about how masks don't work, and that's like her secret alt account. Even if that's the truth, even if she's doing that, it's so simple to just wear a mask when you're in public like that for nothing but the conversation around this stuff. It's just easy as shit. They can't get right. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, I think honestly, based on the response I saw to how she reacted to Lindsey Graham and how she conducted the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, like even Democratic leadership and the caucus itself is sick of her. I mean, all of these anonymous Democratic senators were talking to the media and basically saying it was an embarrassment and that she's not like implying she's not cognitively there. I mean, she doesn't care at all. Yeah, take action. But she doesn't care at all about the optics of anything she's doing. She doesn't care about embracing Lindsey Graham. She doesn't care about mask wearing. I mean, she's not even like aware of the overall goals of the Democratic Party, as vague as they even are.
Yeah.
Right. All right, let's go to. Do we want to play the Kill Me clip really fast or nah? It's not worth it. What do you think?
Not worth
it. All right. Let's go to some. Let's go to some IMs. I feel like we sometimes throw the IMers under the bus, sticking them on the very end here. But we have a few more minutes than usual, so let's get to some IMs. Salad Fingers says,
"Oh, what a throwback."
So y'all are salad snobs, like Sam is uppity about his apples. You saying iceberg lettuce isn't even a competent lettuce?
Yes, it's not a competent lettuce. It doesn't taste like anything, so you're just eating the dressing. And then why are you having a salad at all?
That's delicious. Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite salads. The iceberg lettuce, the romaine, anything that's salad that's crunchy.
But then have a pizza. Like
I thought salad was French for dressing vehicle.
Right. I thought salad was French for French dressing. Let's go to Cuddly Cudlow says, Matt, the Cuomo sexual. Oh, this is on you, Matt.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We got a Pelosi defender. We got
me and Randy Rainbow.
I've got Sad Beto. Who's your problematic crush, Emma?
Feinstein.
No, yeah, Dianne Feinstein, obviously. I mean, like, I shouldn't. Barack Obama's always been a good-looking guy. Okay.
That's not what we're talking about here. That's not a problematic.
Was that
phase.
lame?
No, he sucks. I'll take it.
It's pretty problematic.
You can't name him a problematic fave. Like, that's too.
Why not? He's a colossal piece of shit.
Because the point is that Pelosi and
okay,
Feinstein
I have a good one.
and
I have a good one.
Cuomo have absolutely nothing likable at them. If anything, Obama at least has a likable personality.
Okay,
That's
you know who's good looking in the Trump administration is that guy Chad Wolf.
The guy who actually doesn't have his job. He's just there.
Is this yeah, exactly. Like, is this a judgment-free zone? I was asked about my problematic crushes and I gave them to you.
His name is literally Chad.
I know.
I hope you know that the reason that Pelosi is my problematic fave and Cuomo is Lex problematic fave. I hope
it's not their looks.
Yeah, is that because we find them attractive?
No, that was the thread on Twitter, was like problematic crushes, right?
Oh yeah,
okay.
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that's what we were going with.
No, we're just also taking up, pet horrible politicians with zero redeeming qualities, including their looks.
Oh, okay, got you.
As people to defend.
The fact that
I have a problematic crush on Beto. Okay, we all know
Really?
this, but only when he's sad and dejected. That's what makes me happy. I haven't checked in on him in a while. I wonder how he's doing.
Listen, the fact that Nancy Pelosi and Andrew Cuomo are both babes, it's just a side effect of all this. It's not really what
I find Andrew Cuomo like so gross because he's such a bully, and it's just such a turn off of like
I think his speech pattern is so weird and bizarre to me. And I don't quite understand it. I don't know if he had something going on when he just talks in a way that, like, his brother doesn't talk that way. Did his brother like need to take classes or something so he could have his broadcasting career? It's just that the way he talks is so off. I've never heard anyone speak the way he does. It's very weird. Yeah. I don't know how to even explain it. It's not a stutter. It's not an impediment. It's not a speech impediment. It's just something's off about it.
He leans into like the New York accent and he thinks it's like folksy. And I'm like, yeah, you're the son of the governor. It's not like you came up off the streets.
Right. Eddie from Ohio says Tommy Tuberville will be the next Republican president. No one else fits the Trump mold better than him.
That's so true. That's so true. And like, you cannot underestimate how beloved college football is in the South, even though it's an exploitative system that does not pay any of their players for their labor. They can tear their ACL and never cash in on their immense talents. Anyway, talk about
There's
like
that sports knowledge.
But that's, I mean, it's like literally a remnant of old school slavery.
Yeah, no, it's horrible.
It's horrible. I mean, the coaches make tens of millions of dollars a year and the players get nothing.
They're literally often the most highly paid people in states.
Exactly.
College football coaches.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes they're higher paid. Like, I think Nick Saban's higher paid than some like NFL coaches, because God forbid in the NFL you have to pay your players. But I digress. So I honestly mistrust anybody that comes out of any like coach or high ranking person that comes out of the college system. But like, it is worshipped down in the South, and they're all cults of personalities and could totally win like based on that support.
We should just start calling him Tommy Tub Girl, because no one wants to vote for that or think about that. Just every time you hear his name, it will redirect your brain to tubgirl.jpg. And I don't think he's going to be a problem anymore.
Did you see that interview he gave? I forgot all the little bits and pieces, but there was one where he mentioned, well, one was that he legitimately says that his like grandfather or his ancestors fought socialism in World War II. Which, I mean, unless he's saying that they were Nazis, I mean, okay. But, and then he also said something like the three branches of government were the House, the Senate, and the judicial, or something like that. Like, the guy is The guy's
Yeah.
the guy's dumber than dog shit. I mean, he's not very bright. This is the guy who Alabama chose over Doug Jones, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Incredible.
But I mean, when
Incredible.
you coach for Auburn, it's kind of like done deal.
Right. You know, civil rights lawyer who's super, you know, basically like a civil rights hero in some aspects, and a guy who coaches a football team. They're pretty much the same in that aspect, right? I mean,
yeah.
Let's go back to the IMs. DK in Chicago says, out of morbid curiosity, I got the new Call of Duty Cold War, and like 20 minutes in, it's so over the top in terms of pro-CIA propaganda that I can't tell if it's serious or satire. It wouldn't let me use Salvador Allende as my display name, and the server said it was inappropriate. So I'll assume this trash isn't satire if they have actual parental control style filters for Allende references. Wow. Disgusting shit, folks.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
That's a little
hilarious.
bit surprising, actually, that they would think about that. Yeah.
They need to make sure he's really dead.
Right. Right. Ryan Cole says, thank God Cotton's a terrible speaker and duller than an evening with Jeb Bush. Please clap. Right. Unionized Wrestling says, Binder, have you told the rest of the class about the firing of the WB firing Zelina Vega over a tweet about unionizing? Okay, I don't know if you guys heard about this. I don't know if we have enough time. I'll give the summary, though. Okay, so it's not entirely accurate, but this is what happened. So WWE has realized that their wrestlers who are technically independent contractors, they're not employees, they receive no benefits of being an employee, they have they're independent contractors. WWE recently said that their talent, the wrestlers, can no longer have any sort of social media accounts on platforms that basically provide them secondary income. Those platforms are Cameo, Twitch, things like that. Those two are the main ones, actually. So basically, these wrestlers would, do their WWE gig, and then also they would have a Cameo account where they would get paid to do a video for people, like for birthdays or whatever, or they would do Twitch streaming, and they'd play games while talking about their life as a pro wrestler. WWE said you can't do this anymore. One of those wrestlers, a female wrestler named Zelina Vega, had a problem with this. There are rumors that she was actually making more from her Twitch account than she makes on her WWE contract. So she did not want to give that up. And to show them that she wasn't going to give this up, she, after this decree was laid down by Vince McMahon, she went ahead and opened an OnlyFans account too. Yeah. And they apparently contacted her and said, if you don't close these accounts, we will relinquish you of your contract. And she said, I'm not closing the accounts. And then moments before, like literally 10 minutes before WWE publicly announced that they released her, she tweeted out that I support unionization.
Hell yeah.
So a lot of people thought that she, that's why she got fired 10 minutes later. That's not the truth, but I'm sure they were none too happy about that tweet. And it's really actually kicked off a conversation now. I know Andrew Yang has been talking about the pro wrestlers should have a union for a couple of months now. He was the guy who actually, as part of one of his policy planks, we've criticized him here on this show for a number of issues, but he was pretty good on this stuff. He actually had one of his policy planks, unionization for MMA fighters, which he's now extended to pro wrestlers. And then also just this past week, the president of SAG-AFTRA has come out and said that they're going to start looking into why professional wrestlers shouldn't be part of, SAG, being that they are performers on television, they're entertainers, they technically could be part of SAG. I know some wrestlers actually are part of SAG if they are, in movies, like, John Cena is in, I'm sure even Hulk Hogan, who famously ratted out Jesse Ventura back in the 80s, the last time professional wrestling had a legit unionization movement with Jesse Ventura leading the fight. Hulk Hogan ratted him out and got him fired from the WWE. I'm sure even Hulk Hogan has a SAG card because of all the movies he's been in. So that's the summary of what's going on in pro wrestling. It'll be interesting to see how this continues on.
I'm pretty sure it's also just a gross violation of labor law to tell an independent contractor that they can't have other sources of income, right?
Oh, not only that, WWE wrestlers cannot wrestle for other organizations. You like there are other
Yeah, I saw the John Oliver on it.
Yeah, there are other major like competitors now. One called AEW, where the son of one of the NFL team owners runs this league, and they allow their contracted wrestlers who are on TV every week to also wrestle on independent promotions. Smaller wrestling organizations across the country who don't have TV time and just do their things locally. WWE doesn't even allow that. You are strictly WWE wrestler, you're a WWE contractor, you're a WWE wrestler. That's it. So it's interesting to see. It's also interesting to see how they make they differentiate, like why should wrestlers, why are they allowing wrestlers to have a Twitter account? Is it because they're not afraid that Twitter is going to pay their wrestlers and the wrestlers will decide they're making more from Twitter than, because that's the thing with Twitch. Obviously, it's not just that this is a platform. It's a platform where they are making money, which could mean this platform becomes their priority over the WWE, and WWE can't have that. Like, that's the real issue here.
Twitch is starting to sound kind of good, I gotta say.
What's that?
Twitch is starting to sound pretty lucrative. I keep hearing stories about it. I'm gonna see what it's all about. The Intifada has done a few Twitch streams, but I think maybe
I'm interested.
Maybe we'll start
Twitch makes me feel like a boomer. I'm a little. It's like literally the only platform where I'm like, oh, I'm confused by what all this means. Too much is being thrown at me.
Oh, geez. Well, I hope that I can figure it out. I do. I admire what Hassan Piker's done on Twitch. I really enjoyed going on his stream and talking to him. And I like how he's teaching good politics to these feral children because they need it.
I think it is great. I think like you can't underestimate the amount of time that Hassan has put into that platform. Like he does hours and hours a day. And like as somebody who Twitches myself, like I don't know how he does it because like sometimes you just want a game and not have a whole bunch of people watching it.
But I mean, I'm sure he's making a ton of money, so it makes
that probably helps
easier. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, listen, if I was making a living doing that, I would be streaming even more than Hassan. I'll tell you right now, I'd be like living and breathing on it. I'd just sleep in front of the stream. It would never be off me. You guys remember back in like the early days of Justin TV, where the guy Justin actually hooked up a live stream to himself and streamed everything he did?
That was Twitch, right? That was literally Twitch.
Yes. That would be me if I was making money doing that. It would be my life would be streamed.
Yeah, the money does make it easier, I guess. Here's my breakfast, everybody.
Angel says, embrace gray hair. Look how sexy it is on Sam. Well, Sam isn't losing any hair. That's the thing. That's what my issue is. I'm fine with the hair turning gray. I could always even dye it if I wanted to. Yeah. But the losing of the hair, and listen, no matter what they say, the medical evolution and like plugs and everything, nothing ever really looks the same than your real hair.
No, it's true.
Kamara says, sorry to inform you, Matt, but baldness runs in punks. Us goths, however, are known for our long, lush locks.
That's right.
Right. I forgot that, you guys literally have vampire blood flowing through your system, right?
It's very good for your hair and your nails.
Fourth place Unity candidate. Hey, guys, do you have any solid resources on what is happening in Peru? It's funny you say that because next week, being that it's Thanksgiving next Thursday, and I'm assuming we won't be meeting on Thanksgiving, guys. I mean,
correct.
I wish, yes. But so I also will be doing my stream next week at youtube.com/MattBinder on Wednesday instead of Thursday, because I'm not going to do a show on Thursday. And on that show, I will be having actually a family member who raised and lives in Peru. She's been on the streets at the protests. She's going to come on and give us a rundown of what's been going on over there. So you're going to hear it from a Peruvian. So youtube.com/MattBinder next Wednesday, 9 p.m.
That sounds great.
And we've done a couple segments on TMBS, the Michael Brooks Show YouTube page. David Griscom has done a couple last week, and then this most recent show, so you can check those out too.
Definitely. Nice. I'll probably jump in and listen to those as preparation.
Yeah.
For my
I too want to understand what's going on in Peru, so I will be watching both of them.
It's a crazy scenario where like they got like their vice president got impeached and their president got impeached, and then their whole like succession was blown up because of that. And then they randomly and they impeached him over like stealing money, and then the guy who took over was like lost like the interim president basically was interim president for like a day or something like that. It's don't take everything I said word for word, but that's the gist. But we'll find out more for on TMBS. Go check that out, and then next week on my YouTube channel.
See, you can do plugs too.
Yeah, I'm all right. Not as good as you, but Devoid Reality says Chad Wolf actually looks like a Nazi. Well, that's why Emma's into him, I think, right?
Certainly.
Teacher Lauren says Andrew Cuomo is absolutely unfuckable. Oh, I think we're defeated on problematic crushes, guys. Maybe we'll end it with this IM. Run PMC says Noor bin Laden is my problematic crush.
That's a great one.
Nice.
That's Osama bin Laden's Trump supporting niece. All right, let me we got some. Hold on, one or two more. Madden H-Town says Vince McMahon is a terrible, horrible person. Those contracts are criminal. Yes, very. Pro wrestling ended when the NWO dissolved, says Rock in the Cash Bar. I'm wearing my NWO shirt today, by the way. H-Dub points out that WWE also owns their wrestlers' names. Yes, that does happen. And finally, Mo says bald is beautiful. Also, Riley Cool says Peter Thiel is the one who took down Hulk Hogan and took Gawker down with him. Right. Oh, he didn't take down Hulk Hogan.
Took on.
He helped. No, he said took down, though. I think he has it confused.
Yeah. All right.
Peter Thiel helped Hulk Hogan take down Gawker. He was on Hulk Hogan's team. All right, guys. YouTube.com/Matt Binder tonight at 9 p.m. for everything you need to know about Trump's and the right's Dominion, voter fraud, conspiracy theories. Doomedpod.com for the podcast. Follow me on social media wherever you are on at Matt Binder or search Matt Binder. Guys, I won't see you next week because it's Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. But I'll see you the
Thanksgiving.
week after.
Later, guys.
Oh, watch No Mickey show right after this, and you guys are back tomorrow on The Majority Report.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive.